As we begin today's meeting, we'd like to acknowledge that we are on the gathering here today on the treaty of the territory, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and before them the territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron, and Wendat. We also acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, and other global Indigenous people that now call Brampton their home. We are honored to live, work, and enjoy this land. Please all rise for the singing of our national anthem, be followed by a moment of personal reflection.
Oh, Canada, home and native land, true patron love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we sing, we rise, the true love strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Welcome to our regular council meeting on March 27th, 2019. All members of council are here today. Members of council, there are a few agenda changes identified on the package in front of you. I'll ask the city clerk to review the changes for today's agenda since its publication last Friday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, members of staff, members of the public, these are the changes for today's agenda. There are two added bylaws, bylaws 66, 2019 and 67, 2019, and these relate to matters that were considered at the Planning and Development Committee of this past Monday, March 25th. They are both amendments to the zoning bylaw. The first is Glenn Schnarr and Associates, Top End Construction, 8917 Heritage Road, south of Embleton Road on the east side of Heritage Road in Ward 6. The second is Gore Incorporated, Mosaic, Humphreys Planning Group Incorporated, 9452 the Gore Road, west of the Gore Road and north of Cottrell Boulevard in Ward 8. In addition, the minutes, item 10.4 for the Committee of Council meeting from last Wednesday, March 20th, have been finalized and are on your desks this morning. Item 10.5, minutes from the Planning and Development Committee from this past Monday, March 25th. Those recommendations only have been distributed this morning. The minutes will be presented to Council on April 10th for receipt. As well, item 18.1, a briefing report from the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer regarding government relations matters, specifically the Region Appeal, provincial and federal matters. That was distributed to members electronically yesterday and is on your desk this morning. Added business items and changes since the publication of the agenda. Item 6.1, which is a delegation from the Interim Police Chief, Chris McCord. Just a correction to note that this matter relates to item 8.1 and not 8.2 as identified in the actual published agenda. Regarding item 8.2, which is the 2019 Community Grant Program, there is a revised report, and that report is on your desk this morning. There was a referral from the Budget Committee, which met this past Monday, March 25th, and it's identified as item 16.2, and it is a motion in regard to the following, that the 2019 current budget for the Community Services Department be amended to allow city-affiliated seniors groups up to 2 free facility room rentals per year on evenings or weekends when the facility is not otherwise booked. So that motion has been referred to this council for consideration. As well, there's been additional requests to delegate or correspondence related to items that are on the agenda. Regarding item 8.2, the 2019 Community Grant Program, there is a delegation request, which is identified as 6.2, from David Rajaratnam, President of the Brampton Tamil Seniors Association. In regard to item 10.4, which are Committee of Council recommendation CW 127, 2009 regarding senior transit fares, there is delegations from the Brampton Senior Council, and those are identified as delegation 6.3 from Myrna Adams, President, and Peter Howarth, Director. And finally, in regard to item 18.1 on today's agenda, which is a government relations matter from the CAO's office, there is additional correspondence which is not on the printed list but is in your package, and it's identified as 12.1, correspondence from Member of Parliament Ruby Sahota, Brampton North, regarding infrastructure funding. And those are the changes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other additions, changes, or deletions to the agenda? Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add a discussion item on the autism spectrum disorder, and I'd also request to add a delegation from Bruce McIntosh, past president of Ontario Autism Coalition. And I'd like to see if I can vary the order and have him come first.
So, Mr. Mayor, before we take the vote and consider other additions, so that would be proposed item 16.3 regarding autism motion, and proposed delegation 6.4 on today's agenda, as well as the request to vary the order.
We take the vote all at once? Okay. Yeah, okay, we'll do that as a package. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add a very short item on co-ops and internships available through the City of Brampton. I guess that would be other new business 16.4.
Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to remove the item for the current budget on the 16.2 for the 2 free nights. I think I'm going to remove that from our budget, as I didn't know there was going to be 104 youth committees, and we're going to take 300 days, so I'm going to remove from our budget.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the request is to withdraw from the agenda item 16.2, which is the Budget Committee referral motion.
Okay, and with the indulgence of City Council, I also have a motion to be added about a convicted pedophile with an elevated risk to reoffend that is in our community. We were notified of that on Friday. 16.5. That'd be item 16.5. Okay, do we have a motion to accept these changes? Moved by Councillor Fortini, seconded by Councillor Singh. All those in favor? Motion carries. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? The clerk, seeing none, the clerk will so note for the meeting minutes. We are now ready to move to the next item of public business on today's council agenda, item 3, which is the minutes. We have the following council minutes before us today. I have a motion. Second one. I have a motion from Councillor Willens, seconded by Councillor Bowman. All those in favor? Motion carries. Consent agenda. The items listed with an asterisk on the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial. The consent motion is to adopt this matter on today's agenda without the need for a separate discussion on the item unless a member requests a separate discussion. Does any member wish to add an item or remove an item from the consent motion on the agenda? Seeing none, I have a motion from Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Willens. All those in favor? Motion carries. Our next item is item 5.1, an announcement regarding the Special Olympics World Games in Abu Dhabi, March 14th to March 21st, in participation by proud Bramptonians. Gary, Lynn, and Stalls and Langway, family of an athlete, are here today for this announcement. Welcome, Gary and Lynn.
You can see that Lynn's not with me today. Your Honor, City Councillors, I would just like to take a moment to ask you to join with me in celebrating the bronze medal game achieved by the Special Olympic Brampton Panthers soccer team at the World Games in Abu Dhabi. For some of these players and their coach Neil Lewis, This has been a 20-year journey that culminated in their trip to Abu Dhabi. The immediate challenges that faced them, they succeeded to win the provincial games in 2017 here in Peel Region. They went to the national games in Antigonish, Nova Scotia in 2018 and won the gold medal. And they were deemed suitable to represent Canada at the World Games in Abu Dhabi. They had a marvelous trip. They came back with a bronze medal. I think we should all be very proud of them. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Just one more thing. The entire expenses of the national games in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, the funds were raised by the Peel Police, and I'd like to thank the Peel Police very much for their efforts, always assisting with special impacts. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of the city, congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Great news. Our next item is item 5.2, an announcement regarding Sports Day in Brampton, April 6, 2019, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Cassie Campbell Recreation Center and the Brampton Soccer Center. Michael Gouveia, Resource Development Manager, actually I think his title has changed, and Kim Inglis Clark are here today for this announcement. I think if I'm correct, Michael, you're the new Executive Director too, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, congratulations and welcome Michael and Kim.
Good morning, Mayor Brown, councillors, city staff, members of the public. As you said, my name is Kim Ingles Clark. I'm the operations manager of Cobra Swim Club. I'm here with Michael Jovey of Brampton Minor Baseball, as well as the new executive director of the Boys and Girls Club of Peel. We also have some of our incredible youth sport leaders as well, the Brampton Sport Alliance. We have Brampton Hockey, Brampton Lacrosse, we have Brams United Soccer, and the track club, Brampton Track Club. Thank you for coming, guys. On behalf of the Sport Alliance, which is a division of the city of Brampton, to provide a voice for youth sports groups and an opportunity for us to collaborate and share our successes in developing sport in our great city and across the region, we would like to invite you to Sport Day in Brampton.
So Sport Day in Brampton this year is on Saturday, April 6th. Just like the past years, it's going to be at the Soccer Center and at Cassie Campbell. So what this is an opportunity for our youth and families to come out and experience sport in Brampton. Brampton's a world-class provider for athletes across the city, our country, and our province. So this is a chance for them to come out and see what sport is like. The great thing, as we already know about Brampton, through our diversity, the different ranges of sports that we can now offer is great for everyone to come out, experience it, be cricket, kabaddi, soccer, the other sports that we have offered for many years. We encourage everyone to come out. With that being said, it's a family-friendly, free opportunity for youth to experience it.
So, bring out your running shoes, maybe even your skates, and if you're really brave, your bathing suits. And we hope to see you on the 6th.
And we have some information just to pass around to councillors.
I see the first councillor on the list is Councillor Bowman. He may be volunteering for the Cobra Sports Day. We'll see what he's has to ask. Oh, back on the board.
There we go. Thank you. I'm the sponsor for this announcement. It's phenomenal. Any of the councillors, we encourage you to come out and participate in all the sports that you can. I've been there for each of the years that we've had it. It's a phenomenal opportunity, and you get to meet some of the people who are involved and some of the volunteers who are involved in making Brampton the sports community that it really is. And these guys are developing future superstars in every sport, and it's just unbelievable. So last year I think I got to try cricket for the first time, and it's actually pretty cool. It's sort of like baseball, only different. Sorry, Michael. But so please, everybody come out, encourage your friends, and I would ask anybody who's on social media, please spread the word through social media to all your accounts, and let's make this a tremendous day to come out and try any of these sports. They're phenomenal, especially lacrosse.
Just want to give one more shout out. The staff through Terry and Gary have been fantastic. It's been great working with the city. Again, every year it's fantastic as we continue to build our partnerships. It just continues to grow and grow. So thank you for all that you are doing. Thank you for what you've done.
Yeah, and I work a lot with Cobra, but I've never actually been in the pool yet.
Oh, maybe
Well,
this
we'll
is
get
the
you in there this
year.
time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to tell you that sorry, come on back. I was there last year with my kids, and I brought my nieces and nephews. So we had 6 of them running around, having a wonderful time. I request that you change absolutely nothing. It was the perfect day. They had an opportunity to go around at the soccer center and try everything and talk to some of the professionals at the booths. It was a fantastic day. We loved every minute of it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Willens.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming, Michael, and it's nice to see that the sport groups are working together. Some time ago, when I was the president, and we have the current president, Brent Myler Cross up there now, but when I was the president, we were fighting with other organizations to bring our registrations up, and it was then the late Dave Dash brought forward, started the Sports Alliance with the different groups to get them working together, to get the kids active, to get them into sports, regardless of the sport. So it's great that we've got such a diverse amount of sports. It's great that that's continuing, and I want to thank you both for keeping it going. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other councillors, and I too look forward to participating in the sports day. We're all looking forward to it being a great event. I have a proclamation from the city of Brampton that we're issuing today. Whereas Sports Day in Brampton, with the city of Brampton and the Brampton Sports Alliance work to get youth more physically active and engaged. And whereas the Brampton Sports Alliance is a volunteer committee within the Parks and Recreation Division that provides a voice for youth sports and a forum for these groups to share solutions to common problems and challenges facing volunteer-based youth sport organizations with the goal of helping youth find success in sport, which makes them feel valued and wanted. And whereas Bramptonians can join us for a try-it, hands-on experience of the sports in Brampton on Saturday, April 6th from 10 to 4 at the Soccer Center and the Cassie Campbell Recreation Center. And whereas we work to promote and recognize Brampton as a sport tourism destination, assist youth sports programs and individuals by linking them to and promote the Brampton Get Active strategy and the many benefits of physical activity, I, Mayor Patrick Brown, do hereby proclaim the month of April as Sports Month in the city of Brampton. I'll present this proclamation to you.
Yeah, sports, get on there.
I would note that at the YMCA fundraiser, Councillor Santos offered a Muay Thai kickboxing lesson, so you may be able to volunteer her for that on the sports day as well. Councillor Willens, he may want to volunteer for a sport as well.
Well, no, I just heard through Councillor Bowman that you were going to put on some goalie equipment. We're going to fire lacrosse balls.
We'll participate in every sport that day. How's that sound? Moving on the agenda, our next item is item 5.3. We have 3 remaining proclamations to read today. The first one is for World Down Syndrome Day, March 21st, 2019. And I saw there was a great event in the community on the weekend for World Down Syndrome Day. And it's great to see the community come out in support. I noticed last week was a committee of council where we don't do proclamations, and that's why we're having this proclamation at the first council meeting that was available. Whereas on the 21st day of the third month of every year, Down syndrome, with all its wonderfulness, is celebrated all over the world, the significance of the date relates to the third copy of the 21st chromosome, which represents why someone is born with Down syndrome. And whereas Down syndrome is not a disability, nor is it an illness, it is distinct culture within all cultures with its own beliefs, customs, language, and common bonds. People gifted with an extra 21st chromosome transcend borders, socioeconomic, color, and ethnicity, bringing with them a richness that enhances the lives of those they touch. I, Mayor Patrick Brown, do hereby proclaim the day of March 21st, 2019 as World Down Syndrome Day in the city of Brampton. And I know we have a few friends from the community, so maybe we will present this proclamation. If you'd like to say anything, you're welcome to as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, that's awesome. So I understand I only have 2 minutes, and I do have the gift to gab, so I will be quick. Thank you, Mayor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Bowen. And thank you, Mario Russo, for bringing this day to everyone's attention. As you said, World Down Syndrome Day is celebrated annually on the 21st day of the third month, representing trisomy 21, otherwise known as Down syndrome. This day is officially observed by the United Nations since 2012, and it's celebrated by rocking your socks. So on that day, remember to wear 2 funky socks, just to show your respect. I love telling the story. If I could tell the story without tears, I'll try, but I love telling the story of when Christina was to be born. She had 2 suitcases to choose from. She had a typical suitcase, excuse my back. She had a typical suitcase, and then she had this other suitcase. She chose the other suitcase. Then she had to choose her mother, and she chose me. I'm pretty sure she heard me rather than see me. I knew that she was a gift, and I knew that I needed to do something with this precious gift. So what I did was I did my research. What I was told about Down syndrome by the medical community was not to have any expectations of my daughter. Don't expect her to be a doctor or a lawyer, to be exact. So I couldn't take this for what it was worth. I knew that my daughter was more, and I knew that she meant more. So I had to change the narrative. So what did I do? I started to celebrate Down syndrome. And what better way to do it but with cupcakes? We own Christina's Tortina Shop. It's a little cupcake shop here at, I know where I am, hold on, Main and Vauden. And we provide equal employment opportunities for people with Down syndrome. When Christina was 3 months old, I made her a promise. And the promise was, I wouldn't change you for the world, little C, but I promise to change the world for you 1 cupcake at a time. I made the promise and I kept the promise. 10 years later, we're recognized all over the world. We have people from Texas, New Zealand, Germany come to our shop, see how we operate, and hopefully they get inspired to do the same back in their own countries. As of late, Christina was chosen as one of Barbie's inspirational girls celebrating her 60th birthday. That I have to say was bragging rights right there. So Mayor Brown, what I do wish to ask of you is if we can have our Down syndrome group come and meet with you, sit and talk about our needs as well. It seems like all the focus is going elsewhere, but there's a community of people who do get discriminated against, and we have solutions for that. So hopefully I can contact your office on that. So now I'm going to leave you on this note, and it's the Down Syndrome Creed. And it speaks volumes for everybody in our community. And it goes like this. So my face may be different, but my feelings the same. I laugh and I cry, and I take pride in my gains. I was sent here among you to teach you to love, as God in the heavens looks down from above. To him I'm no different. His love knows no bounds. It's those here among you in cities and towns that judge me by standards that man has imparted, but this family I've chosen will help me get started. For I'm one of the children, so precious and few, that came here to learn the same lessons as you. That love is acceptance, it must come from the heart. We all have the same purpose, though not the same start. The Lord gave me life to live and embrace, and I'll do it as you do, but at my own pace. Thank you. Thank you.
And we'd be happy to have a meeting anytime with the community. Good. I note that at our New Year's levy this year, we had the cupcakes named after Christina at City Hall and at our public skate, and it was great to have you as part of that event. And I know if you do bring cupcakes to that meeting in the mayor's office, Councillor Paleshi wants to come as well. Our next proclamation is for, Councillor Willens. He wants cupcakes too. Councillor Willens.
No, thank you, Mary, for coming. I don't need any cupcakes, but thank you for coming. As you know, we've had conversations. I have a cousin with Down syndrome, and those doctors were wrong. Connor is, I know that Babu will be happy to hear this, but I know that Mayor Brown may not be, but Connor plays for the Ottawa Senators special needs team and travels all over the place, and he also plays basketball. And to see the delight on his face to just get on that ice and get in that basketball court's incredible. And they have challenges, but I'll tell you, they're the nicest people I've ever met.
Seeing no other questions, thank you for joining us at City Hall today. We now have Autism Awareness Day, and I wonder whether Bruce McIntosh isn't. Is he, oh, he, okay, great. Okay, welcome to City Hall, Bruce. Bruce has been a real leader in the autism community across the province, doing incredible work on behalf of families with children with autism. So it's a privilege to have you here today in our city. He's gained provincial-wide fame for his courage on this file. So it's nice to see you in Brampton. And we want to make this proclamation. World Autism Awareness Day will be recognized on April 2nd, 2019 in Canada, thanks to Liberal Senator Jim Munson's Bill S-206, an act representing World Autism Day. Whereas the autism spectrum disorder, ASD, affects more than 135,000 Ontarians, autism spectrum disorder is now recognized as the most common neurological disorder, affecting 1 in every 66 children, as well as their friends, family, and community. ASD is a spectrum disorder, which means it's not only manifests itself differently in every individual in whom it appears, but its characteristics will change over the life of each individual as well. A child with ASD will become an adult with ASD. And whereas since 1973, Autism Ontario, formerly the Autism Society Ontario, will be providing support, information, and opportunities for thousands of families across the province since 1973. And whereas Autism Ontario is dedicated to increasing public awareness about autism, the day-to-day issues facing individuals with autism, their families, the professionals with whom they interact. Therefore, Mayor Patrick Brown do hereby proclaim the day of April 2nd, 2019 is Autism Awareness Day in the city of Brampton. And before I ask Bruce to come up front, for those that may not remember the name, Bruce was the individual who 3 or 4 years ago led the charge for Better Autism Services, was then awarded with a job in the new administration, and about a month ago, when there was changes to autism funding, was the whistleblower that called out those changes. And so I just want to say that took a lot of courage, and I want you to know when there was the gathering in Brampton about those changes, a few of us took an extended bathroom break from City Council. The committee and council was meeting that day, and Councillor Santos and Councillor Williams joined myself as we went in a snowstorm to that local gathering of families that were protesting the changes. And I know later in the agenda today we have a motion from Councillor Paleshi, whose wife works with families with children with autism that's going to express our city's support for the campaign that you've undertook to make sure that there's a light shined on what's happening. So it's with great honor that I present this proclamation to Bruce, and thank you for joining us at City Hall.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to take my comments for my delegation.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a very kind gesture, thank you.
In our last proclamation, and today's unusual that we have 4 proclamations, so thank you for bearing with us. But this is the 4th one's quite a significant one as well. It's Sikh Heritage Month, where Sikh Heritage Month is the perfect opportunity to show honor to the growing and vibrant Sikh community in Brampton, who have made significant contributions to the growth of Brampton and its prosperity and continue to do so, whereas Sikhs in the city of Brampton aim to share the Sikh culture during the month of April, as Sikhs all over Canada and internationally come together to celebrate Vaisakhi in April, also known as Khalsa Day, signifying the creation of the Khalsa and the Sikh Articles of Faith. And whereas by proclaiming the month of April as Sikh Heritage Month, the city of Brampton recognizes the important contributions Sikhs have made to Brampton's community, economy, political, and ethnic fabric, and whereas the Sikh Heritage Month is an opportunity to remember, celebrate, and educate future generations about Sikh Canadians and the contributions they have made to the city, the province, and our country, I, Mayor Patrick Brown, do hereby proclaim the month of April as Sikh Heritage Month in the city of Brampton. I don't believe we have representatives. Oh, do you have? Okay, great. Okay, yes. So we'll present this, and I'm going to ask Councillor Dillon and Councillor Singh to join me in the presentation of this proclamation. We have a proud history with the Sikh Heritage Foundation, whether it's with exhibits at PAMA or events at City Hall, and I know we've got a significant one coming up in April that the city of Brampton is proud to host. I'd also note that for Khalsa Day, the city of Brampton will be represented both in Toronto at their function on April 27th and at the Molten Gujaras Khalsa Day Parade on May 5th. And I know Councillor Singh and Councillor Dillon will be with me to make sure the city of Brampton is well represented as we celebrate the Sikh community in our city.
Good morning, Mayor Brown, councillors, city staff, and everyone here today. My name is Priya Korkesh. I'm the founder of a tech accelerator called Our Wave Hub and the executive director for the Sikh Heritage Month Foundation. And on behalf of the foundation and the Sikh community in Brampton, thank you so much for this honor. Our journey of building this vibrant community started with the vision of being able to shape our own futures, of taking initiative and creating platforms that nurture creative expression, ideas, arts, and culture. Sikh Heritage Month is only ever made possible through partnerships with both private and public institutions like the city, the region of Peel, PAMA, and community organizations like the World Sikh Organization and the Sikh Foundation of Canada. We first launched as a month-long festival in 2015 with over 4,500 visitors. And last year in 2018, we had about 10,000 visitors throughout the month. Fingers crossed we exceed that number this year, but our kickoff event, which happens yearly at City Hall, is happening this Saturday evening, so if any of you are available to attend, please do. Sincerely, thank you again. We really count on the support from the city and the region, and could not build and scale community organizations without your support, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item is delegations. Today we have Councillor Dillon has a question. Oh, sorry. Priya, you're not allowed to leave yet.
It's going to be very quick. I just wanted to thank Priya for her hard work and the entire board as well. And also just want to give a quick shout out to our staff. For the past few years, they've helped organize Sikh Heritage Month and a whole array of festivals and Heritage Months as well. And I just want to say thanks to them for the great work. And I want to thank the leadership of this council as well. For not only supporting Sikh Heritage Month, but really putting a number of different Heritage Months, supporting a number of different Heritage Months as well. So I just want to thank everybody involved. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon, and well put. Our next item is delegations, and I think there's been a variance in the delegations. Just respectful of the chief's time. Is that okay? Okay, good. I know he's busy keeping us safe. So our first delegation will be from the Ontario Autism Coalition. Bruce McIntosh.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Brown, and esteemed members of council. As members have heard, the province has made changes to the Ontario Autism Program, and my message to council today is that these changes do not bode well for municipalities in Ontario. Autism is a neurological disorder comprised of 3 deficits: verbal communication, behavior, and social skills. There's a range of severity. Those 3 deficits may present in varying combinations from person to person, and so autism is described as a spectrum disorder. The therapy offered by the Ontario Autism Program is known as ABA, or Applied Behavior Analysis. It's the best researched, longest used, and most effective method that we have to teach children and youth with autism. At the intensive level, it consists of 20 to 40 hours per week of one-to-one therapy for 2 years or more, supervised by a psychologist. For children with lower levels of need, or approximately half the children in the program, it takes fewer hours for shorter periods. ABA works, but the trouble is it can be expensive. The cost of those high needs programs can run to $80,000 annually, but most don't. And a tightly focused program for children with lower needs can come in at around $10,000. Instead of refining the program to add better accountability and take advantage of efficiencies, the Ford government has ignored the spectrum of need and moved to a cookie-cutter system of funding that gives every kid the same amount. Equality is not equity. Every child in the program is to receive $20,000 per year until age 6. That's not enough for the high needs children, and most parents can't afford to top it up. It's also more than what's required for the lower needs kids. What's worse is that on a child's 7th birthday, funding will drop to 1/4 of what it was the day before. That's not an adequate amount for any kid on the spectrum. And for the Ontario Autism Coalition, this feels like the movie Groundhog Day. We thought this issue was settled. Age does not influence a child's level of need. Twice we fought the last government on this point, and the PCs, including the current minister, stood with us both times. But memories have failed, and here we are. Again. Now, I told you at the beginning of my delegation that I would explain what this means for municipalities such as Brampton. I'm going to start with a trigger alert because this will not be easy to hear. The impact on school boards will be profound. A few hundred children with autism register for school in Peel Region each September, and going forward, these children will not have had adequate therapy to prepare them for school. But this coming September, the children who have been in full-time therapy will arrive very abruptly, and those that have been in part-time therapy and part-time school will suddenly be in school full-time. I know firsthand that school staff truly want to support kids with autism. My wife teaches in the Peel Board, but I also know that training has not been adequate, and the schools are not prepared for this development. Some kids will be sent home, and that will place stress on the job security of the parents who are called to pick up their kids on most days. If they're unable to maintain employment, household finances will take a huge hit, on top of efforts to pay for therapy out of pocket. So there's going to be a drag on the economy as well. We learned in a survey a few years ago that bankruptcies happen in the autism community at 20 times the rate that it happens for the rest of the population. The impact on social services delivered by municipalities will be equally profound, as the cost of lifetime services for a person who has not received sufficient behavioral intervention ranges into the millions. First responders, including police officers, EMS, and firefighters, will find their ability to meet the community's needs challenged more and more frequently by children and youth who may be in trouble or in danger and are unable to verbally respond or know what is socially acceptable in those situations. On behalf of fellow autism parents across Ontario, and in particular here in Brampton, in the strongest manner possible, I urge Council to request that the Ontario government stop these changes and plot a different course that will deliver services based on need and with no age cutoff. Help us prevent the negative effects on children and youth with autism, their families, and their communities. Thank you all for your time and attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Councillor Peleschi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bruce, thank you for coming. I don't have any questions for you, but I do have, as Mayor Brown has alluded to, I have a motion that I'd like to introduce, and I'd like the opportunity to provide a comment and introduce that motion now, bringing item 16.1 forward as well. 16.3, sorry.
Okay.
I understand. We have, there's a real issue that we have here taking shape, and it reminds me of a movie called The Perfect Storm, which happened in Gloucester, Massachusetts, where these storm cells collided to make one giant storm. We in government, navigate our way through to try and ensure that things like this don't happen here at the municipal level. I've had the privilege to be married to my wife, who's been a teacher for a number of years now. I don't want to give out her age, but I think it's around 12 or 13 years. And we've talked about many things that have been happening and some of the things that are happening here today. And that perfect storm is the reduction in support in ASD, and also the change in the education system, and the changes that look like are coming down the pipes in increased classrooms and a different source of teaching, or a different look at what teachers are in the JK and SK side of the grades. My wife's a grade 1 teacher. she switches a little bit here and there, so I think she's in grade 1, teaching grade 1 now. My wife has 3 children that have been diagnosed with ASD. She has these children currently. She has one of the children every day, and she has 2 of them on Wednesdays. So depending on where they are, what their family, it really is going back and forth to Erin Oaks kids and getting the help that they need. But in my wife talking to the parents, what it comes really down to is the fact that the lack of funding, the lack of support that's coming forward is going to put these children full-time in school, in the classroom, every day with one TA, with one person to be able to help support and try and control of maybe an increase of 35 or more children that with the increase of classroom sizes. So that's what I reference when I'm talking about the perfect storm. And again, I thank you for coming here today. And I think that us at the political level, even though we're only the municipality and this is a provincial issue, I would like to offer up our support and introduce the motion that I have that's been put on the board. I'll read it out as, whereas according to the National ASD Surveillance System, NASS, Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD, is one of the most common developmental disabilities in Canada. 1 in 66 children is diagnosed with ASD, whereas according to the Canadian Mental Association Journal, approximately 1% of the Canadian population is affected by ASD, which means there are approximately 100,000 Ontarians with the autism spectrum. Whereas ASD changes over time in its expression, challenges and delights, Ontario must be prepared to support children, youth, and adults within the context of development, learning, family, and community. Supportive, understanding, and inclusive communities ensure that each person with ASD is provided the means to achieve quality of life as a respected member of society. Whereas Ontario must support the individual needs of a person with ASD throughout their lifespan using evidence-based treatment and intervention, while remembering the developmental trajectories that are constantly changing. Whereas the supports and services for adults on the spectrum are inadequate and fragmented and fail to address the needs across entire lifespans. Whereas school boards are expecting an influx of about 1,000 students with autism as families lose funding, leaving educators unequipped with the resources required to provide specialized care and a higher level of assistance for children with special needs. Whereas funding will not address the critical need for assistance for families not only in their younger years, but after the age of 18. Whereas the changes will come into effect April 1st will mean the thousands of families currently receiving services could see drastic cutbacks. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the City of Brampton formally requests the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services suspend implementation of its proposed plan and continue to identify and advocate for a sustainable funding plan for families with individuals with ASD to ensure adequate resources for applied behavioral analysis and needed therapies. And further, that the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services work collaboratively with families, community partners, and stakeholders to develop a funding plan which will guarantee every person with ASD has access to funding, specialized programming, and a service provider that the children currently enrolled in autism's programming continue to receive services, and further, that the clinical expert committee be reassembled to provide advice and feedback, and further that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Premier Ford, Minister Fedeli, local members of Provincial Parliament, and AMO. And Councillor Dillon has seconded that motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Peleshy. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the mayor. First of all, thank you, Councillor Peleshy and Councillor Dillon, for bringing this forward. I will be supporting this motion. Just a couple of questions, Bruce. Thank you for your courage and the way that you stood up for families across this province and leaving your employment. In terms of the program regarding income testing, I'm always under the impression I know normally, and I tend to say this even here at the city, when we're looking at programs that should be income tested, transit being an example. Can you just provide me a little bit more information or the stance on why that isn't the sort of best approach when it comes to, I guess, the program which is being, which the province rolled out?
Well, Councillor, I can give you a little bit of good news. The minister made an announcement on Thursday that the new program will not be income tested.
Yeah, and I know that. So can you explain to me why is that good not having the income tested?
Well,
like my rationale in my mind tells me that for those who need it, it would be based on, you know, those who can't afford it as much. But I guess that seemed to be an impediment, or that was a barrier.
I guess I have 2 points in response to the income testing matter. We don't understand what causes autism. There's lots and lots of research being done genetically, environmental factors are being considered, but we don't understand that. So really, that 1 in 66 is, for want of a more polite term, it's a spin of a roulette wheel. This can land on anyone. If you find out that your child has a severe form of autism, that $80,000, and this is the second leg of it, is going to fall on a young family. The income may be there, but as we've all started out in life, you have a new mortgage. You probably still have student debt. You've got a new car. All of those other bills just starting out need to be paid. And that's going to be crushing for just about anyone. But why would we, if we are addressing the issue of autism, why would we not ensure that the most effective level of therapy is available to any kid with a diagnosis? And that's my fundamental argument. When we walk into the emergency room at a hospital, we're not asked to bring our T4. That's as simply as I can state it.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Bruce, thanks so much for coming here today. Just want to thank you for all your work that you've done, and I want to thank Councillor Palashi for bringing this forward and showing leadership on the issue. My wife and I have also been have a son who's been diagnosed on the spectrum, and so I can say it's something that's very emotional. It's an emotional roller coaster for anybody, and we've had the opportunity to meet so many more parents, so many parents who've also been through the same situation. And what I can say is that it's such a tough time for anybody, and so we're fortunate that that we're able to pay for some of his speech therapy and other therapies that he goes through. But I've seen so many families who are not able to, and it's so difficult for them. And when you first get the diagnosis, it's you don't know what to do. And I want to thank the CDRCP for being there and helping out. But we do need to put a little bit more pressure on the government, and I think this bill definitely does help. And so some of these kids are actually really amazing. My cousin has a child who's been diagnosed, and they're just such wonderful kids. And it's tough. It's very tough, but I think motions like this will definitely help. And I'm hopeful that other municipalities can follow suit as well. And once again, I just want to thank you for the work you've done. Thanks for coming down. I want to thank Councillor Palashi as well for putting this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, through the mayor. I fully support this motion. I know the work being done over the many years to support families with autism and their children is a long journey. I myself have worked in children's mental health quite some time, and to the point of being in classrooms where there's suspicion of autism. It may be high functioning, but there is still some social quirks going on there. So having to observe, identify, report to psychologists so they can do their assessments. The impacts ABA therapy is great. It can move a child from low functioning to mid to high functioning, which is huge. And so we want all of our kids to be able to grow and work and be excellent contributing members to our society. So taking away this vital therapy and support system, it can have major impacts. And you know, the behaviors I find are driven by a child's inability to cope with the sensory and their environment. So now that we're increasing class sizes, it slows down their ability to be able to cope with their environment and then process how to manage within that environment. It just takes it away completely. And not only does it affect the children with autism, but it also affects neurotypical children as well, because they have to try and manage when a child is having a difficult time. Sometimes classrooms get cleared. It's a difficult situation for everyone to be in. So it really does put strain. I fully support this, and I think we need to make noise. And it's such a shame, like you said, that we're back here again. It seems to keep going full circle. And I would love for us to try and figure out the best formula so that, you know, we don't have to keep changing it, because the change in itself is a terrible impact on the families. It just pushes us back further. So thank you, Councillor Palashi and Councillor Dillon, for bringing this forward, because I fully support it, and thank you for the work that you've done in the past.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. And I just had thank you for coming forward and delegating. This is an issue I dealt with a lot as a school board trustee specifically. So I have a lot of experience in this. My question to you, have other municipalities sent letters of support? Do we know that yet?
The town of Bradford has done so. The town of Whitchurch-Stouffville has done so.
Yeah.
Township of East Gwillimbury has done so.
Okay.
In our last campaign 3 years ago, 174 municipalities, both lower and upper tier, across the province, counties, townships, cities. We had tremendous support.
Okay.
So this is incredibly valuable.
Okay, good. And so I would suggest a friendly amendment, though, that we also send a copy of this to the chair of the Peel District School Board and the chair of the Catholic School Board, if you would accept that, as well, because I know they will also find significant value in this as they were trying to lobby.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Seeing no other speakers, I just want to say thank you to Councillor Palashi for putting this motion forward, and Councillor Dillon for seconding it. I think it's very appropriate as municipalities start to express their voice, how it affects our municipality. As you get to know the families, this therapy is life-altering. It really is. I remember sitting down with one family that told me it's the difference between a child being able to say "I love you" to their parent. They're taking a child into the mainstream, and so if you don't provide this service now, you'll pay much more down the road. And so I'm glad that Councillor Palashi has put on the record that we want our perspective to be on the record in this debate. I do know we have one councillor who just put their name on the floor. So before we wrap up, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for bringing this forward. I really appreciate it, and I believe that a lot of the municipalities in Ontario appreciate this as well. My wife works at Judith Nyman, so she deals with a lot of the kids on the lower functioning scale, and she just loves doing it. She just loves working with them. So I would like to add a friendly amendment as well, that perhaps we ask our regional councillors to bring this to region as well. And perhaps that may have some impact as well for you. So I would like to add that as a friendly, if you'd accept that.
So send some communication.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Seeing that as friendly, I'm going to ask the clerk procedurally, since everyone's had an opportunity to participate in this debate, can we adopt this motion now, or do we have to wait till? Yeah. Okay, good. So, record a vote.
Recorded vote's been requested. All in favor of the motion, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Councillor Santos, Councillor Vasante, Councillor Willens, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Bowman, Mayor Brown, Councillor Medeiros, Councillor Williams, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Singh, and Councillor Dillon. Mr. Mayor, that motion carries unanimously, 11-0.
Okay, thank you. Our next delegation is from the interim police chief, Chris McCord, Peel Regional Police, regarding Peel Regional Police gun amnesty program and gun violence in Brampton and Peel. And I would note it's very appropriate that we have the chief visiting right now. I see we also have Ron Chatha from the Police Services Board here. Just want to acknowledge Ron. But our chief has been doing some great work for the community. I'm sure everyone saw in the media yesterday one of the largest gun seizures in Peel region history. In the area of Sandalwood and here, Ontario. This project, Baron, that the police had been putting resources and time into, is a major breakthrough for public safety. And so I think it's timely that we have this conversation here today, given the police's great work on that front. It's a real relief for the community to know that so many dangerous firearms are off our streets, and the credit to that goes to the courage of our officers, and it certainly, I think, gives the public an appreciation. You know, there's a cost to policing, but when you see that type of results, it makes you value every dollar you spend on policing. When you see a result like that of making our community safer, 1.2 million in guns and drugs, and it was being hidden in a very sophisticated manner. And so we also have a motion today on the issue of the pedophile in our community, and I know the police have been very attentive to that concern that we've talked about as a community. And so I just want to say before your presentation that I'm really grateful for the great work that the Peel Regional Police are doing, exceptional work, and we're grateful to the community.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just before I start going into the presentation, on the subject of Special Olympics, this year we supported the Brampton team that won when they went to Abu Dhabi. We also supported a Mississauga team, and they also won when they went to Abu Dhabi. They both won bronze. Special Olympics is something very dear to Peel Regional Police. We supported through the year, and Mayor, you joined us for the polar plunge, which was totally went in support of Special Olympics. We'll have the torch run soon. It comes up in the spring. But Special Olympics this year will be hosted by Toronto Police Service. And due to the venues that they have, they can't accommodate everything within the boundaries of Toronto. So they will be coming out to the International Centre, where again, the regional police officers will volunteer their time to be there to assist with the games as they continue. They commence on May 14th, that's the Youth Special Olympics. So it's a very worthwhile cause. All of our officers are committed to this and dedicated to it, and continually through the year we try and put as much money back into our own cities that we police. That's where we want to try and get the support for our Special Olympians. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, so thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
So today I'm here in relation to the gun amnesty, and I was hoping, do I have my PowerPoint? Yes. It was
looking to the city clerk momentarily.
That's okay. I can talk at the same time.
You don't have a presentation?
Okay, I sent it yesterday. That's fine. I have everything here and I can talk about it. I do have it in a stick, if you can take it in a stick, and
yes.
I brought that as a backup.
While we get the stick, I just want to welcome to Brampton City Hall for the first time. I see we have Joe Warmington from the Toronto Sun. I don't think he's been in our council chambers before. Welcome to Brampton City Hall. Dan's one of the more well-known photographers in the city of Toronto.
So just by way of introduction first, I have with me today Superintendent Rob Shear, who's my executive officer, but I've also got with me Constable Ed De La Cruz. He is the Chief Firearms Officer for this region, and he has got some background in what I'm about to present to you today. So if we get into some questions that go back to the subject of prohibited firearms, restrictive firearms, and non-restrictive firearms, Ed is our expert, and Ed is constantly dealing with members of our community who want to submit firearms for destruction or sell firearms or dispose of them. So he is here as an expert to be able to give us that information if you require anything. So the emphasis of Peel Regional Police continually is public safety and community safety. And we've always put that to the forefront to make sure that is at the forefront of what we do both in the city of Brampton and in the city of Mississauga. So if I could just give you a little bit of background first in relation to classes of firearms. So you see here from the slide, we have different firearms demonstrated. So you have the prohibited firearms, which are to the extreme right. Basically, prohibited firearms are those that are fully automatic weapons. Machine guns is what you're looking at. And that is an example of some of the firearms that you could find out there. It also includes handguns that have a barrel that is less than 4 inches. So what was commonly known years ago as the Midnight Special. So they are also prohibited weapons. There is people within our community who actually hold these firearms. They're permitted to. The current legislation allows them to have those. They're gun collectors, they're target shooters, and so on, but they are within our community. The restrictive firearms are normally handguns. These are for people who like to go to the range, like to do target practice, and again, we have those within our community, strictly regulated and strictly governed, and we have, as I've introduced, the Chief Firearms Officer, who pays attention to make sure that everybody is in compliance. Then we have our regular non-restricted firearms, which is usually hunting rifles, shotguns that people have for hunting. They may own a cottage, they may own property somewhere, and it's to control vermin and so on. But there is very rigid and strict storage laws in place, and very strict licensing programs in place to make sure that people are handling and storing these firearms appropriately. To give you an idea of the number of firearms that are out there in our region and within Brampton, on restrictive firearms totally in the region, there's almost 16,000 firearms held within the region, and restricted firearms. In Brampton, there's almost 5,000 of restricted firearms. Prohibited firearms, you have 1,700, and again, you have 467 prohibited firearms. So that's the automatic weapons that I identified to you in the previous slide. Violent crime, and what I want to do in my presentation here, and I don't want to go into specifics of some of these incidents because I don't want to re-victimize the victims or the families that has suffered from any of the incidents that I am talking about here. But as you can see, shooting incidents last year, there was 53 victims of shooting incidents within our region last year. And we investigated 504 rounds of ammunition fired in 2018. Every one of those rounds of ammunition that are fired, that poses a potential threat to members of our community. And then we had, out of our homicides last year, we had 26 homicides. 10 of those in 2018 were a subject of gunshot injuries. So, every firearm that we seize is submitted to the Firearms Tracing and Enforcement Program. That is a provincial agency that receives our firearms to try and find out where they came from, to make sure that they haven't been involved in other crimes, and then we trace them back to their actual source. This is where we find out if these firearms were sourced through the United States. And I can tell you in this particular, I can't speak for other jurisdictions, but in this particular jurisdiction, for illegal handguns that we seize, approximately 75% of those are sourced in the United States and have come into this country through the United States illegally. On this slide here, I just want to give you an idea of the offences that are committed, that we investigate, that actually have firearms involved. So when I talk about crimes against persons, there was 579 incidents last year where there's firearms involved. That is robberies, that is assaults, that is you want to sell a cell phone and someone meets you to purchase that cell phone and then produces a handgun to actually rob you of that cell phone. There's actually 253 non-criminal. So that could be road rage situations. That could be other situations where a person is seen with a firearm that doesn't become a criminal investigation, or we are not able to lay criminal charges. And then other criminal code offences. These type of offences, again, firearms are used in many different ways when we engage individuals in investigations and discover these firearms. For intimate partner disputes is what was commonly known in the past as domestic disputes. Last year we had 4 incidents where firearms were discharged in domestic disputes. That is in the entire region. I'm talking the entire region here for the statistics. We also had 3 incidents where we were dispatched to calls where mentally ill people had in their possession firearms, and firearms were discharged. Those are very, very serious incidents. It poses a major threat to our community and poses a major threat to our police officers. And again, within the region, there was 4 incidents where individuals committed suicide with respect to those firearms. These are the sort of incidents I don't want to go into in too much depth, because providing some of the information can re-victimize the victims and the families of these incidents. Last year we seized a total of 459 firearms. Of those firearms that were seized, they come to us in various ways. Some of them are investigations similar to what you saw depicted on the television yesterday through the press release. But a lot of them are seized through people voluntarily turning them in, gun amnesties, people just wanting to get rid of the firearms. So we had 459 last year. The higher numbers that you see in 2015 are as a result of the first gun amnesty that we ran. On that first gun amnesty, we had actually quite an uptake from the community to turn those firearms in and turn them over to us. And that's where we saw our largest numbers at that time. On the gun amnesties, so in 2015, as I alluded to, you will see that there was 310 firearms turned into us the first time we ran a gun amnesty. 2017, we ran our second gun amnesty, and on this occasion we only had 69 turned in. Now, as Peel Regional Police, we normally do that every 2 years. The reason being is, if you do it every year, you get less firearms turned into you. Last year, the OPP were running one, and they asked us if we would partner with them. We agreed to do that to, as good partners within law enforcement, to be able to do that. And we got 34 firearms. But with that, you see the amount of ammunition we're receiving. Just yesterday in the gun seizure that we did the press release on, there was 1,500 rounds of ammunition sitting on the table that we got with those guns. So 460 pounds of ammunition is a lot of ammunition that we're also taking off the street. These guns don't work without ammunition. So every time we do a gun amnesty, we're also getting that ammunition off the streets. So I want to talk to you about the Peel Regional Police gun amnesty program and the way we run it. So this year we're going to start it in May. Normally we would start in April, and we would already be in the planning stages because of this. We have put that on hold because after Councillor Williams came to me and talked to me about the buyback programme, I had to put it on hold to allow us time to have this conversation. To say that it isn't going to be effective, it will still be effective having it in May. It just takes a little bit of a longer time to prepare for it if we're going to introduce this dynamic to it, or if we're going to get the advertising out there to make sure that everybody is aware of the programme starting. So we will start on the 1st of May, and we will start with the programme. We will advertise it on the approach to it. We will continue every week during that month to advertise it as there. Citizens will be encouraged to call in, and there is an actual number, a specific number that you will call, and we will provide it to them. It's a hotline, 905-460-4122. You call into that number and say that you have a firearm that you would like to turn in to Peel Regional Police and get rid of it. That will be then assigned to our street-level organised crime unit. They will make arrangements with the person who wants to turn the firearm in to place the firearm. Normally they ask them to place it in a room where they're not going to be. The officers will attend their address. We tell them we do not want you coming to a police station or coming walking into any police facility carrying a firearm. Please leave it where you are. We will come and get it off you. You will normally leave it in the dining room table. Our officers will go there. The first thing that they will do, they will prove that weapon safe to make sure it is unloaded. Then they will write down the information on the firearm, take the information of the person who is turning it over, and the circumstances behind why they're turning it over. This is normally circumstances of grandfather or father has passed away, they were a hunter, they have no use for those firearms anymore, and they want them out of their home. They will be given a receipt. Once they are given the receipt, our officers leave and they complete an occurrence report in relation to those firearms. Those firearms will be checked to make sure that there is no allegations that they may have been used in the commission of an offence. Once we're satisfied with that, the guns will then be sent for destruction. All firearms received in a gun amnesty are destroyed. There are no options for a gun dealer or a gun collector to come to us to say, we understand that you have received a firearm that I would like to put into my collection. No opportunity for that at all. They're all destroyed. In relation to the buyback program, the buyback program would have to be something over and above what is administered by Peel Regional Police. We could not take any part in relation to the buyback program if that is something that you recommend and approve. So what else do we do? So our approach to all of this is a proactive approach. We want to keep guns out of people's hands, and we have to make positive connections within our community. While we keep young people in our connections with their youth and so on engaged in activity with Peel Regional Police, it means they're not getting exposed to some of the bad individuals that are on the streets that are going to exploit them for gang activity. So we run many youth programs and are connected with many youth programs. Every year we're involved in what we call our YIPPY students, our youth and policing students. And when we bring those young people in for the summer to spend time with those young people are normally identified by the school boards or by agencies that we work with throughout the year. They could be exposed to this because they're kids that are at risk in neighbourhoods that they could be at risk. And we make sure they get a connection with the police service and so that they don't get involved in some of this activity. Our investigative services, as you saw yesterday, they're very diligent, they're very effective. It takes time to do investigations such as this to try and get the guns off the street. Our community mobilization teams. Our community mobilization teams are in your community all the time. You will see them downtown Brampton engage in our community. They build relationships where we're getting intelligence and information to try and target these investigations and get these guns off the street. Our STEP program, it's a strategically enforcement programs that we put those officers out to go after the gangs and go after the guns that we want to get off the street. And what you see up there, VNSLOK, is our Vice Narcotics Street Level Organised Crime. Those were the officers who took that project down yesterday and seized all of those guns and all of those drugs. We're also involved in many partnership and joint forces operations with many other police services, Province of Ontario, our Provincial Weapons Unit, to make sure that we are targeting guns to get them off the street. We also use our Crime Stoppers program to try and get tips on opportunities to try and access some of these guns, again, to take them off the street. Plus, we supply an officer to the Chief Firearms Office to make sure that we have someone who is an expert in-house to try and give the best information to, number one, either control the firearms held by some of our members of our community, or to try and encourage them to take them and turn them in off the street. So my next slide is the results from yesterday. So as you will see, there are 26 firearms there. I think the most profound piece of information that was conveyed to the media yesterday was the item that is in the top picture over to the left, which is a high-capacity magazine. That high-capacity magazine holds 60 rounds. Any one of the semi-automatic handguns in the picture can be modified to receive that high-capacity magazine. And we played a video yesterday that's on YouTube of the threat that that magazine poses. That threat, through one of those semi-automatic handguns, will fire 60 rounds in 4.5 seconds. Where there is a need for that in Brampton, and unfortunately these two addresses were in Brampton, where we did the search warrants, where there is a need for that here, I have no idea. Even for some of the weapons that you see at the bottom, the high-powered military-type weapons, where there is a need for that, we just don't see where that could happen. None of these guns were legally held. We are now in the process of tracing them all and working our way back to find out where they came from. Just the guns that are on the top left corner, if I can just bring this to your attention, anyone who has those firearms will rent them out. They will rent them for anything up to $2,000 to criminals to commit a criminal offense. The gun is returned to them, they have committed their criminal offense, and then the holder of these firearms will get them back again, and he will continue through his process of renting those guns out. The revolvers that you see, so the semi-automatic handguns are the more rectangular shaped ones, but the revolvers, gradually criminals are switching over to the revolvers because the semi-automatic weapons eject a shell casing when they fire the round. The revolvers don't. There's no evidence left behind other than the slug where the slug went to. So if there's fingerprints on the shell casings when the gun is loaded, the shell casings aren't left behind, so there's no evidence left behind. Keeping our community informed, anyone who's connected and follows Peel Regional Police, you will see all of these different sources, whether it be media sources or whether it be social media sources. We're out there, we have a new web page, we're constantly informing the community of information to try and address public safety. The emphasis is public safety and community safety, and that's what I like to emphasize in closing with my presentation. And I am open for any questions that you might have.
Okay, we have a list of questions, and thank you for the detailed presentation. Councillor Fortini first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to say thank you to everyone at Peel Police for the great job they're doing.
Thank you.
I was there yesterday with Councilor Medeiros and Martin and Patrick Brown here, our mayor, and Bonnie Comby. So having a son-in-law in SWAT and having my daughter move up, when I seen that shell, the way it shoots, I couldn't sleep last night. Because it shows the type of work you actually have to go out there to face. And everyone says we have to provide the tools. But we had the town hall not too long ago, and had full house of that street where SWAT goes in, raids the house, and the next day they're back on bail. And we have to push the courts more to keep these type of people inside. A couple of questions. Most of those guns there are not even legal to buy here in Canada on the top. You can't even buy them if you had to. So these are all guns smuggled from the States. I think we received an email, but talking to someone yesterday was telling me the same thing. That you can't even buy one if you want one, if you have a license.
You can't. Some of them are prohibited weapons, and with prohibited weapons, the only way to possess a prohibited weapon due to the change in legislation is that you're grandfathered. But moving forward, you cannot get a license. The RCMP will not give you a license to buy some of those firearms that are there. When you look at the shotguns, the ones that are sawed off, they didn't start off like that, but they're now prohibited firearms.
Yeah, and I've been at the shooting range with my daughter many times, but when I looked at that video, that 60 rounds, that is very scary. And you know, we have this, I don't know, say you can't pull people over, you can't do this, you can't do that. How do we get these guns off the road if our hands are tied? And it comes to a point where we actually have to say, you know, when we stop people, we have to do a search because this is very dangerous. And I don't know how you actually, Peel Police is doing the job these days. When you pull people over and you don't know what they have in their gun and in the car, and these quick releases that I see in the video yesterday, they could get into a handgun right away. So thank you, and all Peel Police for the good work.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Santos.
Got off the screen. There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you through you, Chair. Chief, thank you so much for your presentation today, and to the entire team of Peel Regional Police for the amazing work that you did yesterday and continue to do to keep our community safe, especially in terms of getting guns off of our streets. I have a number of comments, but I also, as my colleagues know, have a motion that I would like to table at this point. And the Chief, you and I spoke about it as well, and this motion is based on previous motions that have brought us here today, and also based on the feedback from many of my colleagues here on council. And I spent a lot of time with a number of people working on this motion because we must take gun violence seriously. This is more than just throwing money at an issue. It means more than just dealing with the downstream effects of gun violence. It has to do with addressing the root causes and making sure that we support our young people so that they don't get involved in these things. So I'm going to put forward the motion now, and the clerk does have it. It's seconded by Councillor Singh. And I will read it as follows. Taking a comprehensive, collaborative, and evidence-based approach to address gun violence locally in Brampton. Now, I'm going to apologize because there's a lot of whereases in here. We received some criticism that the previous motions didn't include enough research and evidence, so we're providing as much research and evidence as possible to support this motion. Whereas policies related to the licensing and enforcement of firearms and gun control are within the jurisdiction of the federal and provincial governments and police services, whereas although not in the city's jurisdiction to legislate or enforce firearms, the safety of our residents is a priority, and therefore the City of Brampton does not condone gun violence and will act based on research and evidence within our jurisdiction and in partnership with all other levels of government to address the root causes of gun violence in the city in order to have a substantive impact and improve the safety of our community. Whereas the Peel Regional Police and the Region of Peel are our immediate partners in addressing gun violence in Brampton and are currently collecting data and completing a community safety and well-being plan that all municipalities are required to have in place by 2021, which will in part identify risk factors and strategies to prevent violence. Whereas Peel Regional Police have been conducting extensive work to effectively seize illegal firearms and continuing operations such as Project Baron, which most recently, as of yesterday, resulted in the largest seizure of illegal firearms in the history of Brampton and Peel Region. Whereas the federal government report titled Strategies for Reducing Gun and Gang Violence in Canada claims that before any policies aimed at reducing gun violence are implemented, it is extremely important to conduct basic research into the nature of local gun and gang violence. One must first understand who is involved and why they are involved in violence before one can design and implement an effective gun violence strategy. Whereas the same report mentioned above suggests that attempts to explain unacceptably high levels of gun violence in the United States, Canada, and the rest of the world are firmly centered on the issues of gangs, drugs, and gun availability. Whereas Associate Professor of Sociology at U of T, who specializes in the roots of gun violence, states that gun control is one piece of a much larger systemic series of changes that have to happen if we really want to curb or completely eliminate gun violence. Whereas in a July 25th, 2018 article, Louis March, founder of Zero Gun Violence, states that local programs that are working to address gun violence in communities most affected by the problem need to be amplified and they need funding. The underlying causes that contribute to violence, poverty, oppression, social exclusion, and neglect also need to be at the forefront of any strategy. Whereas the same person further suggests that many of the youth involved in gun violence want a way out, but in many cases there's no way out for them because the government is not addressing this problem in a meaningful way. Whereas the City of Brampton has a number of youth programs, organizations, and support networks, and is currently reviewing the terms of reference for a youth council, all of which aim to provide more opportunities and support for youth to stay active, engaged, and make positive contributions in the community and for their future. Whereas studies and evaluations of efforts to reduce gun gang violence in the United States, a general consensus emerged with respect to the need for collaboration, which is consistent with the conclusion reached in an evaluation of Canada's National Crime Prevention Strategy, and that suppression offers a short-term solution, but that it can do little to influence levels of gun gang violence in the long run. Whereas the same studies suggest efforts that have demonstrated success in reducing gang violence in such places as Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and many other cities all relied heavily upon the successful collaboration of local, state, and federal criminal justice agencies working in tandem with social services providers, community stakeholders, and in some instances, street gang intervention specialists. Whereas Bill C-71 is currently at Senate committee and focused primarily on enhancing background checks, license verifications, record keeping, transportation, and gun classification, and while the legislation is one piece of the puzzle, it does not address root causes of gun violence. Whereas on March 12th, the federal government announced over $11 million over 2 years to support Ontario's guns, gangs, and violence reduction strategy that focuses on prevention, intervention, enforcement, and prosecution, and deliver prevention and intervention initiatives for women, youth, and young adults. And on yesterday, the provincial government announced preventative programs are critical to providing meaningful alternatives to participating in criminal activity for communities and youth at risk of involvement in gangs and gun violence and victimization. Whereas 2019 is a federal election year and all parties or any current or future government should be addressing the issue in the long term, whereas studies and evidence to include those referenced above conclude that a comprehensive, collaborative, and evidence-based approach is required to meaningfully address gun violence at the local level. Therefore, be it resolved that 1A, the delegation from Interim Chief McCord, Peel Regional Police Service to the City Council meeting of March 27th be received. B, the staff report in item 8.1, capacity of the city's Brampton to support Peel Regional Police Gun Amnesty Program be received. And C, the unfinished business item 11.2 regarding the motion gun violence in Brampton and Peel be received and no further action be taken on that motion. 2, the city work collaboratively with the region of Peel and Peel Regional Police to understand and invest in any gaps in research and data that identify the root causes of gun and gang violence in Brampton. And 3, the mayor on behalf of council advocate to all federal parties to develop a comprehensive strategy to address the root causes of gun and gang violence that include increased gun control and includes collaboration with all levels of government, school boards, service agencies, faith groups, and community leaders. And 4, further, the city advocate to the current federal government and all federal parties to provide more data research that identify where illegal firearms are coming from across the border, to enact legislation to control guns coming into Canada along the American-Canadian border, for tougher penalties, including mandatory minimum sentences for gun traffickers,
to direct more resources to tackle domestic firearm trafficking, specifically targeting large single purchasers of firearms, to implement tougher screening for mental health and intimate partner violence issues for licensed gun owners and those seeking to acquire firearm permits. 5, the city, in close collaboration with the Region of Peel Regional Police Service agencies, work on substantive programs in Brampton that address the root causes of gun and gang violence in the city, to include, but not limited to, youth programs and employment opportunities, mental health and addiction support, and affordable housing, and that staff bring those proposed programs which are not redundant to what is existing in the city or region for council consideration, including any cost implications thereof. And 6, the City of Brampton, specifically Community Services, in partnership with Strategic Communications, work on a communications and outreach strategy which can be measured to effectively inform youth of Brampton, the current opportunities to get involved, get support, stay active, and make a positive contribution in the community, ideally before and during the summer of 2019, and that staff bring that communication strategy forward for council consideration, including any cost implications thereof. And finally, number 7, the City of Brampton, specifically Community Services, in partnership with the Region of Peel and school boards, conduct gap analysis research to identify and provide recommendations that enhance youth programs and provide opportunities for youth to get involved, get support, stay active, and make a positive contribution in the community after this summer season, to be implemented next summer and be part of 2020 budget deliberations and opportunities for funding from the province. That is the motion before you. I have a lot to say about it. Most of it is in the whereas statements. Some of the feedback that was in the original motion identified in 11.2 was incorporated into this motion. Those pieces, we've had conversations among colleagues, and that's why it's included in there. It also includes feedback from staff. And so I think we could be very proud to support this motion, and I encourage my council colleagues to do the same. Thank you very much.
Okay. We have the motion on the floor. So, I think we have a request for a recorded vote, but we have a few more questions.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is speaking to the motion or questions of the chief.
Okay. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I do have some questions about your presentation. Thank you so much for coming out. And I was so blown away yesterday by the bust and everything your team has done. Hours spent. It's amazing. And I think, you know, you're just making the city that much safer, and people are really happy to see this work. The feedback from the community seeing this work has been, wow, we're feeling so much safer, they're doing a great job, so thank you so much for that. So questions about the buyback. So you know, a lot of people say that gun amnesties don't work. So if they don't work, why do the police continue to keep doing them?
Well, I would say that gun amnesties to get guns turned in actually do work. It demonstrates by our numbers to turn the guns in, because they're, you know, someone holding on to that, there is a risk to it being at a home if someone doesn't want it or if the house was broken into. But there is strict laws in storing those guns, and they're supposed to be stored in a metal cabinet, very, very strict laws with respect to the storage part of it. But if they turn them in, we're quite happy to receive them, and as you can see from our numbers, we have received good numbers of people turning them in, but it's completely voluntary. We can't do search warrants, we can't impose that on anyone, because they are actually legally held guns.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. So during your presentation, you said police can't be involved in the buyback. Is it fair to say that you mean that police services can't issue funds directly, but the city can do so to encourage more people to participate in the buyback?
I don't know the rules for the city and how that would be distributed for ourselves. We can't take the funds that are assigned to us for operational policing and provide those to individuals to buy back guns off them. We can't do that.
You can't do that through the police?
Yeah, for operational purposes through our budget.
Right, but for separate funds from the city, that can happen, that can be allowed.
As long as it's administered by the city, we can't take any part in that as the police service.
Okay. How much does it cost to conduct one murder investigation?
It depends on the severity of the murder investigation, like they vary greatly, but you're talking well over $1 million to conduct a murder investigation.
Over $1 million?
Yeah.
And that's regardless if a gun is legal or illegal. It's an investigation on a murder.
It varies because you're asking me about a legally held gun involved in a murder. I don't have the stats here of how many occasions that has happened in the past couple of years, of how many murders we've had where someone has been murdered with a legally held gun. Or in all 10 last year were illegally held firearms. That were all the murders that took place were illegally held firearms, not legally held firearms.
I'm blown away by the number of guns guns that have been used during domestic disputes and mentally ill individuals and suicides. It's still over, that's a high number, 11 individuals. And is there okay, so I just kind of lost my question. So when, I guess what I'm asking is, when does a gun become a crime gun? So if a legal gun owner commits a crime with their gun, say in a domestic situation or during a psychotic episode, does that gun now mean it's become a crime gun? Or is it, yeah?
The act now turns it into a crime gun. Because it's been used in the commission of offence.
Right.
But prior to that, that gun was legally held.
Legally held.
Yes. And when you talk about those stats, remember those stats are not specific to Brampton.
Right.
Those are regional. They're covering Caledon, Mississauga, and Brampton.
Yeah. So in the event that a person passes away, their spouse or heirs don't have a PAL, which is the possession and acquisition license.
Yeah.
How do they legally sell or dispose of their gun?
So they can only get rid of it to another person who holds a PAL, a license. That's the only way that they can do it, or they can sell it to a bona fide gun dealer and so on, or they can turn it into the police.
Okay.
And that's why I've brought the Chief Firearms Officer with me. He gets many of these calls continually of, we would like to dispose of this, and they're trying to dispose of it legally. That is outside the gun amnesty.
Wow.
So there is people wanting to turn their guns in outside of the gun amnesty.
Outside of the gun amnesty. That's good to hear. Do you have numbers on that or no?
Ed, for to be specific, no.
Okay. So just getting into the cost for guns thing. Why do you think 130 people in the past have turned over their guns through an amnesty if they are worth so much money? Why do you think that is?
You'd be asking me to speculate. Because I didn't receive the guns. I don't know if those guns are workable, if they're no longer usable, if they're not worth anything. So I can't answer that. I would only be speculating.
Okay. So according to the report that staff have given, they're suggesting that residents are required to present the Peel Regional Police the official letter clearing the firearm in order to get funds. What is the process to clear a gun after it's been received through the amnesty?
What do you mean? Once we have taken it from an individual?
Yeah.
So you've got a serial number. The firearms come with a serial number. That serial number we will run through the system to try and find out where it came from, when it was sold, how long they've had it, and has it been involved in any criminal activity. We would have the investigation into it. If we suspected it was involved in criminal activity, it gets sent to the Centre of Forensic Science to be able to further investigate that.
And how long does that usually take?
Well, that takes months. For the full investigation, yes, it would take months.
So from the full investigation, if there's concern with it being used in a crime, that can take months. But
Yes.
just to run the serial number?
Oh, it's immediate. They come back in, the officers take the number, and they run the serial number,
And then they're good to go?
yeah, and we can destroy the firearm.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Well, through you, Mayor, I did have questions of the staff, but seeing as how there's a motion on the floor right now, through you, Mayor, and through the clerk, because the other motion is tabled as well, what does that mean for this motion?
I'll refer to the clerk to answer that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so there are three, I guess, 4 items in play right now. There's the delegation from the chief, there is the staff report 8.1 from the CAO, and there is the deferred motion from the last council meeting, which is 11.2. And the 4th item is the new motion that's been introduced by Councillor Santos. So that motion, as you see in the first part, A, B, and C, is dealing with the procedural motion to receive the delegation, receiving the staff report, and receiving the motion 11.2. So all those items are currently on the floor of council for debate. So if there are questions that you may have in regard to that report 8.1, it is appropriate to ask those questions at this point in time.
Okay, so we can ask the staff questions of the report on the gun
That is
buyback.
before council at this point in time, yes.
It is? Okay. So I would like to ask staff a couple questions from the report. Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Why did you pick $5,000 as the amount of money? Was that based on the perception of the number of guns that will get turned in, or what was that based on?
Through the chair, it was in speaking with the interim chief at Peel Regional Police and getting some statistics on previous gun amnesties within the region of Peel, and then estimating it based on that $100 a piece. And if we were to get similar numbers, we would end up in the range of about $3,000 or so dollars, or $3,500. So we had just increased it to approximately $5,000 in the event we got additional guns, to be on the safe side.
Okay. So to the staff, are you aware of the concept of price elasticity? You know, where people's behavior changes when you increase the price or give more money for their guns. And, you know, so I'm thinking, like, if 103 people handed their gun in for $0, if you then offer $5 or $10, then more than 103 people might turn in their guns. And if you offered 50 to 100, then many more people might turn in their guns. So what are we going to do if we get more than 50 guns turned in? Because now we're putting a price to it.
Again, through the chair, we are quite familiar with price elasticity.
Yeah.
And going by trend data, which is an accepted scientific approach, that, and going by the cost estimate as per the direction from council of $100 a piece, it was safe for us to come up with that number and range. In the event that additional guns come in, we will manage that accordingly.
Yeah. Okay. And it's also, I know according to the report, historically the city has not participated in a financial incentive program for guns. So that means if we do vote in favor for this, then we would be making a historic vote today if we vote in favor to do a gun buyback with the gun amnesty.
Sorry, through the chair, is that a question?
Kind of. A question and a statement. Yeah, so through you, Mayor, I think, you know, for myself, I've worked frontline in mental health services for a long time, and worked with many youth, and as a multi-systemic therapist, constantly studying the driving factors to antisocial behavior, and constantly working with families and parents who have children who are engaging in antisocial behavior. The work that has to be done and the studies that have to be done do take time, and there are many services that are out there doing this work as well. And you can see from your report, Chief, that there are many different proactive steps being taken to help decrease the amount of gun activity, decrease the amount of domestic violence and mental health issues that you're faced with. So at the same time, I know sometimes you have to change the legislation in order to allow organizations to be able to do their work more effectively. Sometimes you need those laws to change. With that said, I know background work is very important, and so I appreciate this motion that Councillor Santos put forward. However, I would like to remove the, add an amendment, or to remove or vote separately the gun buyback piece, since it is separate. It is an actual program that we could be voting in favor for to run for the month of May to help boost the gun amnesty that the Peel Regional Police does. So I'm asking that clause B, and the therefore be it resolved, be removed so that we can vote on that separately. Sorry? C. The gun. No capacity of the city of Brampton to support the Peel Regional Police's gun amnesty program.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe what Councillor Williams is speaking to is Part 1B of the motion statement, and to vote on that separately, if that's the request. And if that motion were to fail, then council may be able to consider the CAO's report and move a motion in regard to a buyback program, if that's council's wish. That would only be if that motion fails.
Sorry, explain that to me one more time.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe you're requesting a separate vote on Part 1B, and that motion, if that were to carry, is just to receive the CAO's report and take no further action.
Okay.
So if your intent is to actually encourage council to participate in a buyback program, then motion 1B would have to fail, which means council's just not receiving the report, but council wants to consider the report more fully, and then a motion could be placed at that point in time to consider a buyback program.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Any additional questions?
No, that's it, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask council, given the fact we do have the chief of police here for an extended period, and we appreciate the discretion with his time, but he does have significant responsibilities in the Peel region. Maybe if we have questions for the chief directly, we could ask him now. And then if there are debate over the motions or commentary that councillors like to make, then we can do it once the chief leaves. I'm just mindful of how busy and important his responsibilities are. I'm going to keep this list, but are there questions specifically for the chief? Okay, so following the order, Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to thank the chief for coming down today. I've had an opportunity over the past couple of years to really see the work you guys do in depth, and quite literally you put your life on the line, and I want to thank you for that, for keeping the entire region safe. And sometimes, you get to hear criticism of the police sometimes, but when you really see the work that you guys do, the things that you see, you really have a greater appreciation. So first, I just want to thank you and the entire police service for everything. I have just a couple quick questions just about gun violence in general. I remember about 10 years ago, it was the media had said, it was the year of the gun. There was about, there was an increase, a spike in gun violence. I remember just in the Malton area alone, there was about 5 or 6 gun homicides just in one small area. And we saw that decrease over that time, and we've seen a lot of investment from the Region of Peel and from City of Mississauga as well, and so they've really changed the complexion of what Malton looks like, and you've seen that go down. Do you see hotspots in Brampton or in the Region of Peel where there's more gun violence? Part B to the question is, what do you do to resolve the issues that we have in these hotspots, or is it just widespread that you see it sporadically in different places that you see these gun issues?
So there is gun violence distributed throughout the entire city and actually throughout the entire region. If I was to put a map up here with all the hot spots, you would see that they're pretty well distributed throughout the entire region for gun violence. Because most of your gun violence is related either to drug activity, robberies, they're crime related. The guns only come as an item of intimidation to get the person to comply with what the criminal wants to do. In saying that, when you refer to the year of the gun, the provincial government put a lot of funding into us to try and reduce that. And that, as you saw over a number of years, that it dropped and it became safer. But you again see that creeping up again and coming back in, and I'm not sure that that funding is going to continue for policing. In fact, the message that we're getting, it may not. There is funding in relation to guns and gangs, but I don't know what that's going to look like, and I'm waiting to find out what that is so that we as a police service can apply for that funding to make sure that we can keep the streets safe. But how we're effective is the deployment of our officers in different roles. So you've got your frontline officers on patrol, but we have many investigative services working behind the scenes with very in-depth investigations that involves intelligence, surveillance, and a lot of legwork to get us to the point where we came to yesterday and being able to show the seizure that we did yesterday. So there is a lot of work going on within this region to try and target that.
So the second question is, and final question is, how gun violence is, we've seen it widespread throughout the GTA, and how closely do you work with some of the other jurisdictions? Because, you know, we probably see people from Toronto coming here. We probably see some of these criminals come from other places. Like, how closely do you work with them, and what steps do you take to prevent some of those people from outside coming into Peel Region?
So currently we have 15 different joint forces operations, which involves different police services around the Greater Toronto area. In fact, we go as far as Waterloo and Windsor, where we have had gun activity where the individuals involved in that has gone from this region as far away as Windsor to commit their crimes. So 15 of those, though that's a lot, and that's a lot of partnerships. We work very closely. Probably our biggest partners are Toronto, York, and the OPP, our immediate neighbours. And we have many joint forces operations with them working on these projects. In fact, when you see most press conferences, you will see a combination of the OPP, Peel Regional Police, Toronto Police, because we have been in partnership to be able to tackle this problem.
I appreciate you coming out today. I have no more further questions. I just want to say thanks once again, but I also just want to note through you, Mr. Mayor, that I do support the motion brought by Councillor Santos.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions for the Chief, Councillor Vicente.
Thanks, Chief, and thank you to you and to the members of your force for everything that you do. The Peel Regional Police Force used to offer or participate in the PAVIS program.
Yes.
The Provincial Anti-Violence Intervention Strategy. I know that that used to be funded by the province. The previous chief spoke quite forcefully about how effective it was in helping you deal with gangs and guns. What is the state of that program now? Because I understand your funding has been reduced in recent years. And how important is that program in terms of your overall strategy?
So when I presented the budget this year, during that presentation, I advised that at the end of 2018, that funding ended. And we do not have that funding moving forward into 2019. And when I referenced in my presentation the strategic enforcement patrols, that is what that funded. Because you could take those hot spots that Councillor Dillon referred to, that we could target those particular hotspots to try and curb the gun activity. So that PAVIS funding, we don't have it. We are still working on trying to press the provincial government, and they keep telling us that, you know, it will go to the Treasury Board and so on to see what funding is going to be available this year, but we're still waiting to find out. But as a police service, we're not sitting around waiting to find out, because we have to get ahead of this before the weather changes. Once the weather changes, then normally we find the activity increases, and we want to be out there to be able to address it proactively ahead of it.
The City of Toronto, through you, Mr. Chair, the City of Toronto recently received an announcement for $25 million in funding for their police force. Has Peel Regional Police received a commensurate amount of funding to help you guys do your work?
No. We didn't get the same money. We didn't even get consideration for it. It's not a case that we haven't been lobbying for that money to try and get it. There was an announcement about a week and a half ago from the federal government of 11.5 million that would be coming to support guns and gangs. I am going to a meeting on Friday morning with the chiefs from the Greater Toronto area to try and get our share of that $11.5 million and find out how it's going to come to the region of Peel, because we want our share of that to try and deal with this. So the meeting's set up for 9:30 on Friday morning.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, Chief, in your opinion, what can this council do to aid you and Peel Regional Police to secure additional funding from the province?
Basically support us when we're talking to our MPPs and so on. I've actually met with all of them and talked to them about trying to get that support for funding through the provincial government, because that PAVIS funding was key to us, and it really, really made a difference.
And Councillor Santos has informed me that this motion captures our support for you to work to the provincial government to get that funding. On your gun amnesty program, you mentioned in your presentation you were planning to have an amnesty program for the month of May. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Now, when you say you're doing it in the month of May, does that preclude the other months of the year, or do you essentially have that program open all year long?
Essentially, anyone can turn in a firearm at any time, all the way through the year. And what they normally would do would contact one of our divisions, say they have a gun that they want to turn in. The officer will give them instructions as to what to do, and then we will take possession of that firearm safely. So it continues all year. It's just there's a heightened awareness, there's advertising, and we assign officers specifically to deal with the volume.
Through you, Mr. Chair, would the introduction of a financial incentive slow you down or impede you from being able to continue that program short and medium term?
It definitely wouldn't impede us, and it wouldn't slow us down. We had our plan and we're moving forward with it, and the only thing that slowed us down was we put it off from April till May to allow us to have this discussion, that's all. We are still going ahead in May.
Okay. In your opinion, when you compare the effectiveness of a gun amnesty program and a program like PAVIS, which would you say has greater effectiveness and is deserving of funding more? Having a PAVIS program or an incentive for a gun buyback?
The two of them come from this at two completely different perspectives, so I know what I would want for the PAVIS funding and know how much we need the PAVIS funding. In relation to a buyback program, I can't give you any, I haven't got no information on that as to if it would be effective, it wouldn't be effective, or what we could use that money. I don't have any information on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Chief, for coming.
Thank you.
As everyone else has said, we appreciate everything you do in the community, and you do have an extremely dangerous job. And we appreciate the fact that you're out there doing it for us. I just had one quick question. I don't think you mentioned it during your report. So of all the guns that have come back over the past 3 years in your gun amnesty program, have any of those gone on to be found to be the weapons that were used in the commission of an offense?
None. None of them, the gun amnesty, were used in the commission of an offense.
So no gun that has been turned in has ever been used in an offense. I guess that's good news. Is there anything that you see here in the motion that you might not agree with in terms of how it affects your job and the police's job?
And sort of have to defend myself a little bit here. There's a lot of information here to look at that I'm not sure how to assess the benefits of it and what we would get from it. So to speak to that with an informed decision, I'm sorry, I don't know that I can answer that for you today.
Okay. No problem at all. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the mayor. Thank you, Chief, again, and to echo my colleagues, all the amazing work that our police services do. I guess being on regional council the last 4 or 5 years, I don't recall once Peel Regional Police coming in to say they need more money for the amnesty program. Can you speak to that? Has there been, and even at the recent budget, I don't recall a specific appeal to have an increase in funding for the gun amnesty program?
So for buyback programs, they come in many formats. There's pixels for guns. So police services in the US were given cameras for someone who would turn in their guns and so on. We as a police service do a lot of research in that. We track what's happening in other jurisdictions and try to follow up of the effectiveness of those programs. We had no evidence ourselves that they would enhance our program, but with no evidence of that. So because we had no evidence of it, we didn't go out and pursue anyone that may support us. But I have to emphasize, we had no evidence to give us that information either direction. If we thought that we could have, it may not have been to come to regional council, but we may have went out and partnered with one of our corporate partners and so on to offer an incentive. But it's just something that we've never followed up on.
And I guess through the mayor, this type of incentive, I guess my concern around the whole discussion around this, I'm not an expert in policing, and my responsibility as a regional councillor, when we get the budget, we review the budget, we listen to Peel Police. You folks as the experts tell us what you need, what are the tools and resources you need, and we saw clearly yesterday that when you give you those tools and resources and that support, the fantastic work that you do. And sometimes my issue around this discussion here at the city being in I'm not sure, I wouldn't put you on the spot to comment, but there's an allocated regional budget, there's a process, we have a two-tier government, and it just seems for us to bring you in here for this lengthy discussion, we've taken valuable 2-3 hours of your time where you should be out there with your officers bringing more resources, because that discussion is properly held where the oversight of the budget is. So if there was a need, and the need was identified, I think politically, by some of my colleagues, where the proper process would have been through the region. Ultimately, it's the same taxpayer, so tapping into where funds would have came from, I would have been more comfortable having the services tell us that based on research or based on the success of the amnesty program or what you see in other jurisdictions, you would come and through the discussions at Police Services Board and or at Regional Council. So I just think that we're almost falling over ourselves, trying to show the community that we support public safety, and then we come in. I don't want to say waste your time, but essentially we brought you in today to spend hours trying to deal with this when it's properly dealt with at another level of government, which is the rightful level of government, and we've put staff in a difficult position to comment on areas in which it's not their expertise. They're not. It's not our business here at the city. So that's just a little bit. I just want to say fantastic work. Thank you, and I'm sorry to have to be faced in this situation when we're looking at a gun amnesty program, which the thoughtfulness is there, but there's a proper process to do it, and we work within the two-tier system, and I just think this wasn't the right avenue to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Medeiros. Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to change a little bit of the subject here about the pedophile. A couple of questions.
Okay.
Can't speak to that?
So we have the chief here right now. can we not? Well, just know that he has to leave.
That's what I was
gonna
asking.
call the question.
Go ahead. Yeah. Wait, I figured since he had to leave, we were gonna ask some questions, or it's because he's not on the subject.
Okay, well, Council. I'm looking for. Are you?
I don't have to leave immediately. I can take a seat until you finish this item and.
Okay, so if I get the sense that the next speaker is going to call the questions, so having that, we'll let the next individual do that, and then we can do the follow-up question. So, Councillor Singh,
Yeah, call the question.
request is going to call the question. All those in favor of calling the question? Motion carries.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, recorded vote's been requested, and specifically for first dealing with a separate vote on Part 1B, which is to receive the staff report 8.1. So with council's indulgence, we can take that vote first. So all members in favor of Part 1B? Sorry.
Councillor Fletcher?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Chief, for coming, and I always like an opportunity where you can, one, get in front of camera, get in front of some people and educate. I think our police force does a lot of education, and I think that's always something strong that works in the community. Councilor Willens and I hold a number of town halls, and we always invite Peel Regional Police to come and educate members of the public. So, when some members say this really isn't your job, effectively it is, and there's money allocated in the budget to ensure that education does happen. Additionally, at the region of Peel, we don't really essentially approve your budget. Your budget's approved by Police Services Board and effectively the province. So we just wanted to ensure that there was no misunderstanding there. I'm a gun owner, Chief, and for me, is an amnesty program going to convince me or ask me to bring in any of my firearms? No, my firearms are properly stored in safes, separated from the ammunition. I am an unrestricted and restricted licensed owner. I also have fell into the grandfather clause where an old firearm could be passed down from my father to me. But I'm not much of a collector. But I do have an old firearm sitting around. Do I like to have it there? It's stored safe. It's actually all separated, and I think even we removed the firing pin as well. But do I have to have it? No. Are you willing to give me $100 for it? I might bring it in for something like that. And essentially, if I don't store my firearms properly, and my house gets broken into, and somebody steals any of my firearms, that's what that's what I think is most effective about having amnesty programs. We've seen a decline in the numbers as per your presentation. If there's an opportunity where we could partner with somebody, whether it be City of Brampton, Region of Peel, or a private sector company, anything like this, I think, is in support and trying to get those numbers back up. It's always a good thing, is it not?
It is, but I've got no evidence to offer you that it is effective. I can only give you the facts of what we're currently dealing with.
No, and I guess, with the numbers declining, we know that programs like this are somewhat effective in getting guns out of the hands of everybody or anybody, and having guns demolished or what you tend to do with them. So if there's any kind of incentive, it has to be that those numbers would increase. If, I know you don't have any background information, but if stars align, don't they drive that way? If you're offering some sort of funding, aren't we going to see an increase? Don't we assume that there's going to be an increase in numbers in people
Turning
going
their guns
through the
in.
program?
Potentially, there could be.
It's safe to assume that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Chief.
Okay, speaking of the clerk, it's only those, once the question's been called, it's only those who haven't spoken who are eligible to speak. So Councillor Santos, I see your name on the list, but since you've spoken,
Just a point of order regarding what we're voting on right now.
Clarification.
Clarification. We're voting on first 1B, then the entire motion.
That's correct. So we're voting on whether or not we should just receive the report 8.1 as is, correct? With
Okay,
no
yes.
further action.
Yes.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the first motion is 1B, to receive the staff report 8.1, capacity of the city of Brampton to support Peel Regional Police's gun amnesty program, to receive only. All in favor of this motion, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Councillor Santos, Councillor Visante, Mayor Brown, Councillor Maderos, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Singh, Councillor Dillon. All opposed, please stand to be counted. Showing opposed is Councillor Willens, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Bowman, and Councillor Williams. Mr. Mayor, that motion carries 7-4.
And now the main motion?
The main motion are the remaining parts, 1A, C, and 2 through 7. All in favor of the motion, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor of the motion is Councillor Santos, Councillor Visante, Councillor Willens, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Bowman, Mayor Brown, Councillor Maderos, Councillor Williams, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Singh. Councillor Dillon, were you standing? For in favor?
Yes.
And Councillor Dillon. Mr. Mayor, that carries unanimously, 11-0.
Okay. And now, for any final questions for the chief before he gets back to work, I know we have the other motion today on the child sex offender in the community, and so if there are some brief questions, we may have an opportunity to ask the chief about that as well. We have Councillor Fortini and Councillor Paleshi on the list.
Oh, no.
Yep. Yeah, okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just talking about the pedophile there, is he gonna be staying in our wards or in Brampton for a long time, or does he have a restriction, ankle bracelet? Could you give us a little bit of briefing on it?
All I can tell you is operationally, we're working with Corrections Canada actively. We've been working on it since we became aware of this individual, and there's quite a lot of work gone into this collaboratively with Corrections Canada. I can't give you an indication. I wouldn't want to give you a promise that I can't keep.
What about,
I can just assure you that there is a lot of work going on into it, and I think from what we've demonstrated in the past couple of weeks of the work that Peel Regional Police does, I can assure you that there is a lot of work going into this.
what about his medication enhancement, and is he still, does he have to take it as women in fear of this person because of,
I
he doesn't take the pills?
can't speak to that.
What else I wanted to ask? So, what about websites, dating sites? Are we tracking these now?
There is investigations going on, and there is monitoring going on, but to be specific, I can't go into any specifics that's actually being done at the minute.
So really, we can't monitor his internet or computer, or is he allowed to use phones and something like that?
I didn't say that.
Well,
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, and to the Chief. This has to do with the individual in our ward, wards 1 and 5. in terms of their long-term supervision order, which requires them to take estrogen enhancements. Is that individual, do we know if that individual is still taking the estrogen enhancements, and are women in our community no longer at risk?
So the control of their medication or what medication the person has taken is monitored totally by Corrections Canada. We can't go in and demand documents, we can't go in and so that's why I'm not in a position to be able to speak to that. That is Corrections Canada's responsibility. Even the supervision of the long-term order, again, that is the responsibility of Corrections Canada. Where Peel Regional Police comes into it is, as you saw when we released the alert on Friday, our responsibility is to keep this community safe. And to keep the community safe, we will do what is necessary within legislation and the law for us to be allowed to do that. And that's what Peel Regional Police are doing.
Thank you. Just one final question. Have there been, speaking about keeping our community safe on this matter, have there been any attempts by HARCS to contact women in our community over the current stay, in person or over the web, or any recent attempts in Brampton, for example, utilizing dating sites, etc., to contact any local members of the community?
I can't discuss the investigation as we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that the whole community has been pretty upset over this issue, and a lot of them have showed concern over the 4 hours of unsupervised time. And so I'm assuming that, well, 20 hours a day that this person will be supervised. And is there any conditions or stipulations for that 4-hour period that the Peel Police is not able to monitor this person, or will he be monitored 24 hours a day, including these 4 hours?
It depends what you describe as monitored, because we can't be infringing on this individual's rights also. In saying that, since we have heightened the attention to this individual, I know that their desire to use the 4 hours that they're permitted to have, they're not using it.
Okay. And so this is obviously a cost to our taxpayers to have the Peel Regional Police, monitoring or following this person. How long do you know that he's going to, or she is going to be living in Brampton?
Yeah, that's under the control of Corrections Canada. We have no idea as to how long they will be here, but what I can assure you is, while they are here, it will remain right as one of our priorities.
And I appreciate that. And like I said, there's a lot of concern from people, and we have a lot of children here, especially in our downtown. There's so many, parks, playgrounds. In the downtown during the day, you see them after school as well, and so we're just very, very concerned. Some of the things we've heard about this person are absolutely just they're heinous in nature, and they're just everybody's on their toes, and so we have faith in you guys that you're going to be doing a job. But I know that the mayor has sent a letter out. There's been it's been in the news, and so I'm hopeful that everybody at home is as safe as possible. But it's a situation we don't want to be in. I have young kids myself, and to live with this fear, I don't think our residents deserve that. But obviously, it's out of your hands, and we will be having discussions. I know the mayor will with some of our federal counterparts. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. What do you recommend the community do to increase vigilance during this time he's here?
So the reason the photograph is out there is so that that lady is clearly identifiable and knows who she is. community should make themselves familiar with what she looks like, and they have to report this to Peel Regional Police. That is the only way that we can continue. We're doing what we do, but public safety is more than just Peel Regional Police. It's the community involved with Peel Regional Police. So that's why we're there, and we're willing to respond to any complaints or any information we get from the community. So they should be using that to their benefit.
Okay, so share the photo as much as we can.
Yes,
And
that's why we put it
in
out.
prominent places so people can
Yes.
see. Do you have any departments that are, that we can go to connect with, partnership with, to help educate parents on what to look out for, signs of your child being groomed or your teenager? Like, what departments would you recommend we reach out to?
Sorry, for what purpose? For the
For community education on sex offenders.
I would have to get back to you on that information. I off the top of my head, I wouldn't want to point you in the wrong direction.
Okay.
I'd have to get someone to give me that information.
Okay, that would be helpful.
I will get somebody to connect with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, judging from your answers, I have to assume that when you talk about how she's being monitored, that she's not wearing something that tells us where she is.
She's not.
Now, is that in conflict with human rights legislation, or is that because the courts have decided that is not necessary? Can you comment on that?
I can't comment on it. I don't know what authorization Corrections Canada has been given to deal with this individual. So that would be their responsibility.
Okay. Is it common practice that someone might be monitored that way, that is released?
I don't know. This is a rare occurrence in our region, so I don't know if they have that even available to them.
Yeah, and the reason I'm asking is because if we're going to be putting a motion forward later for increased coverage or surveillance, I just want to make sure that if that's a possibility, that we can ask for something like that. But and that's why I said I don't know whether that is.
I don't know if it's a possibility or not.
Okay.
But
Thank you,
given the circumstances of her case and so on, I don't know. I don't know all
Right.
of the facts.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've heard reports that Ms. Harks admitted to assaulting 60 individuals or more. That is not the conviction that we've read about. Are there investigations happening now into those other cases?
So all of the incidents that occurred happened out west. So you're talking British Columbia, there was some incidents in Calgary and so on. As far as those investigations, they're done. The matter has gone before the courts. There's nothing outstanding that is before the courts.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the mayor. Thank you, Chief. In terms of this individual, are there other individuals, or I know you told me that, I know you said that it was very rare in the region. Are there any other, pedophiles or criminals in our region in similar process?
Not to this degree. Anytime that we have anything that's a public safety risk, you may recall about a year and a half ago, we had an individual who was living in Brampton that committed a sex assault in Barrie. And again, we released the photograph, we released the information as soon as we became aware of it, so that the public were aware of it and that they could be aware of where the individual was living. Again, that was an ongoing situation where we would monitor the situation to make sure they didn't reoffend, because the allegations against that individual was a violent sex assault. But it didn't even happen in our jurisdiction. He was given an order by the judge to live with his mother, and his mother happened to live in Brampton.
And I guess through the mayor, Chief, this individual who's come upon our community, was he first offered, or did Corrections Canada look at other jurisdictions before he ultimately, I guess, in a really cruel way, we won the lottery ticket to have him come here? Were there other jurisdictions that they looked at previously?
I don't know about so he was in Toronto prior to being here. He did make a specific request to be moved from British Columbia did not want to remain in British Columbia.
And he was accommodated.
He was accommodated through Corrections Canada.
Wow. Thank you.
Okay, given that we've just had this discussion, I'm going to ask council's indulgence to move the motion forward, since we just had the discussion. And then we can put it on the screen. Thank you, Chief McCord, for your time today. So keep up the great work. Just want to, so do we have we need to get council's approval to bring it forward? Do we have everyone's approval to bring the motion forward? See some hands? Motion carries. Move to bring it forward. This is seconded by Councillor Dillon. I wrote a complaint on the weekend to the federal public safety minister. This formalizes that complaint on behalf of the city to make it more official. And obviously, this is a very unique circumstance. And what I try to highlight in this motion is, if you look at the area that Corrections Canada has selected, this is a neighborhood. If you look at the long-term release order, long-term supervision, it's not supposed to be near children. And if you look at this area, it includes Gage Park. You're in Gage Park and you see filled with children, especially when we have the skating rink out. Rose Theatre that has programming for children. Kenwillen Square where we have events all the time. The PAMA, our art gallery, that runs children programming. We just finished the children programming that was there during March break. The Brampton Library, the notion you wouldn't suspect to see children at a library is ridiculous. Rosalie Park, the YMCA, Central Public School, and McHugh Public School. So obviously there are real problems with the area selected. I don't believe they've done their due diligence. And I think this formal complaint, just like we did on the express train, I think there are situations when it warrants the city to issue an official complaint, and I think this would be an appropriate scenario to do so. So, seeing no additional discussion, can we have a recorded vote?
Recorded vote's been requested on the motion on the screen. Please stand to be counted. In favor of the motion, Councillor Santos, Councillor Visante, Councillor Willens, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Bowman, Mayor Brown, Councillor Medeiros, Councillor Williams, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Singh, Councillor Dillon. Mr. Mayor, that motion carries unanimously 11-0.
Okay. And normally, when we adjourn, for lunch at 12, we adjourn for 1 hour. We're now past 12 o'clock, and I know a few members have asked if they can have the chance to run over to the Brampton Board of Trade event. If I have council's indulgence, I suggest we return at 1:30 rather than 1. There's 2 more delegations. Okay. Okay. So the recommendation was that we hear the delegations and we'll stand items down until after lunch. Okay?
The first delegation is 6.2, David, the president for the Brampton Tamil Seniors Association.
Oh, this is the bishop, yeah. 6.2, David from the Brampton Tamil Seniors Association. David Rajaratnam.
Honorable Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I am David Rajaratnam, President of Brampton Tamil Senior Association. Our association started with 4 members a few years back, and within a short period of time we have grown up to about 400 members. I am here today because we need your support to get this recreational grant application to help our seniors to get connected to the community, reduce their social isolation, loneliness, and improve their quality of life. We have submitted this grant through online process to provide recreational activities to our seniors twice a week at Go Meadows Community Center. Even though it was confirmed by the city that this application was in progress, due to some misunderstanding or miscommunication, it turned out to be the city never received this application. Without going into investigation and finger pointing, we are kindly asking the honorable members here to accept and approve this application, which is the lifeline for our members. The quality of their lives depends on the work we do, and our association embrace that responsibility with deep sense of commitment every day. Without this grant, we will not be able to increase their connectivity and make them feel that they are part of this community. Our recreational activities plan to reduce the loneliness, isolation, and other mental issues. Our activities include yoga, tai chi, computer classes, English classes, keyboard learning, local trips, swimming, and badminton. In the previous years, we received grant from New Horizon for seniors and managed to run these projects. But this year, due to budget reduction, we did not get this New Horizon grant. These activities we run are very important to seniors. This leads the seniors to have better quality of life and lower use of health care. Our services to about 350 seniors depends on this grant, and we kindly request your approval to help the helpless. Thank you.
And what I understand is that that because of the technical glitch and the late, that viewed it as a late submission, it didn't meet our criteria, but the staff was supportive of this application. And given the fact that staff was supportive and there was a glitch, I understand that Councillor Fertini had a solution that he was going to suggest that we that would fix this. And so we're going to deal with that after? Is that the plan? Okay. Thank you, David.
Thank you, sir.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I thought there was agreement to hear the delegations and then stand the items down till after lunch.
Or if we can
Okay.
resolve it, just do it now.
Is there any discussion on this matter? Okay. 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 To accept the late submission.
How much?
9,000. Okay. Okay, the request from council is to keep it as, to stand it down as per the original agreement. Next delegation. Myrna Adams, President, and Peter Howarth from the Brampton Seniors Council.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and city staff. My name obviously is Myrna Adams. I'm the president of the Brampton Senior Citizens Council, and I am here this morning to advocate on their behalf. I represent over 70 clubs in the city. Also, that translates into about 10,000 seniors. We would have had a strong delegation here this morning. We had lined up 100 plus seniors to come out and support us, but because of the miscommunication, they weren't able to attend. I do believe that on when the campaign was going forth, that free transit was promised to seniors. I understand now that perhaps this is not to be the case, or not immediately, that it would not be until perhaps 2022. And I do think that if you're going to make a pass available in 2022 for seniors, that you could also make free transit available to seniors at the same time, rather than that pass. As seniors, for myself, I'm on the bus every day, all day. I had to run from one place to get here today to be here at a certain time. Seniors go out, they volunteer every day, they go to medical appointments, they're out babysitting their grandchildren, and maybe some of them with their children. And then they have to come back. So if you add that up in a day, many seniors are paying $6 or more in that dollar fare just to travel around. We are very active now. We're not all sitting home in wheelchairs or watching television. We come out, we want to be out. And for those seniors that can't afford that fare, it means that they have to stay home. Those seniors are isolated from being able to go out and enjoy activities. Sometimes seniors like to come just to go out and meet at a coffee spot so they can sit down and reminisce with some of their other friends. And I believe, I'm just thinking about some of the calculations here. Sorry, because when I run from one place to another, I get a little rattled. I am a senior. You have, I believe the cost to actually implement the free transit fare for seniors is about $1.2 million. And if I'm not wrong, I think that you have hired new staff at a rate of $1.3 million. So it is less to implement that transit, free transit for us seniors. Peter?
Thanks, Myrna. Mr. Mayor, councilors, staff, and ladies and gentlemen. To add to Myrna's information, I am also wearing two hats. I had tonight in here, I had to cross that out. We got a phone call about, 10:15. Can you get over to City Hall? We're meeting now. We were advised the meeting was tonight. So seniors, sometimes it's, sudden change is really hard to deal with. But anyway, we got here. So thanks for biding your time, and thanks to the clerk's office for getting in touch and getting us over here. But I'm wearing two hats today because I'm also on the board of directors for Brampton CARP. And the Brampton CARP Board has also passed a resolution to support implementing free fare for seniors now. That would add another roughly 3,000 seniors to the some 10,000 that are part of the outreach of Brampton Seniors Citizen Council. And further to that, last night, Myrna and I both sit on your age-friendly advisory committee as well. There was a motion approved at the age-friendly advisory committee last night that also supports implementation now of full free fare for seniors. Some of the councillors around this table asked us to delegate, and originally it was supposed to be tonight, and it didn't seem for input, but rather to sort of ratify a decision that was already made. We had, I guess, an issue over the Riverstone property, not that we objected to the property, but we raised the issue of consultation with seniors. A year and a half ago, we met with your then CAO, a commissioner, a director, and some of his staff, and we're assured, going forward, any decisions impacting on seniors, Brampton CARP, Senior Citizens Council, and other affected groups of seniors will be brought in for consultation ahead of the curve, not at the end of it. So, we do hope and anticipate that going forward, BSCC and CARP, among other seniors groups in Brampton, are truly consulted before you make major decisions impacting our lives. Our mayor stated, as Myrna pointed out, that during his term as mayor, he will introduce a free Brampton Transit Pass for all citizens 65 years of age or older. And we realize he mentioned term, and that does run 4 years. It's our opinion, however, that the no-fare transit policy for seniors should be implemented now. There's 4 reasons for this. Firstly, more than 5,000 seniors in Brampton are living at or below the poverty level. You add to that the surrounding demographic of low income, and you're talking probably close to 10,000 people who are making ends meet with great difficulty. So for many of those individuals, Brampton Transit's their only means of city mobility. Even at $15 a month, that's $180 a year. For some of those folks, that could well force them to choose among transit, food on the table, prescription medication, or other essential necessities regarding what to cut from their budget. And obviously that then leads to the chance of much greater social isolation, which is a huge kind of issue among our population today. Secondly, your staff report indicates that full free transit implementation, the revenue loss could approximate 1.2 mil annually. But the report also states that the program could not be implemented prior to Q4 2019 or Q1 2020. Does that reduce the potential revenue loss? But in any event, it's our feeling that a $25 million surplus can more than cover the cost of free transit for seniors. And you're going to be doing it anyway, it looks like, in 2022 as it stands now. The report also highlights that Brampton Transit's RC, the revenue to cost ratio, is 50%, and proudly states that that is the highest among York, Hamilton, Toronto, and Durham. Durham sits at 38%. So should we be proud that we're making more money off our transit than surrounding areas in the GTA? I don't know. Thirdly, as a council, you have indicated the intent to move to full free fare policy in 2022. Is there any concern that Brampton voters might be somewhat skeptical that political gamesmanship may be at play, as 2022 is also an election year? And finally, we're in the process of having the United Nations declare Brampton an age-friendly city. The major cities in over 30 countries around the world have free transit for some or all of their citizenry. We urge Council to make a bold statement to the GTA, the province, the nation, that we, the City of Brampton, respects and values its seniors and is committed to the realization of an age-friendly city. And we ask you to approve the implementation of a free, fair transit policy for seniors in Brampton no later than Q1 of 2020. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And this item, like the other item, is we're standing it down for now, and we're going to have the discussion after lunch. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
And so, do I have council's return? It's 12:19 now. Return at 1:30. sorry for the delay. Councilor Medeiros and myself were meeting with our regional minister, Nav Baines, and traffic, as you expect in Brampton, can take some time. So, Clerk, the section we're at right now.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we should go back and, one, receive the delegation regarding the Tamil Seniors Association request, and then council can consider item 8.2, which is the 2019 Community Grant Revised Report.
Okay, I have a motion from Councillor Fortini, seconded by Councillor Williams. The delegation from David Rajaratnam, President of the Brampton Tamil Seniors Association, to the council meeting on March 27, 2019, be received. All those in favor? Motion carries. Are there any, is there a motion followed with that? Discussion? Brampton Tamil Seniors.
For our hospital for $4,600, and now they were hoping that they were going to get the grant, and the miscommunication was that they didn't fill it in right, but when they did call, they were told it was in process, so nobody actually checked, so there was I think some communication there.
Through the chair. So the Brampton Tamil Seniors Association submitted started to submit 2 community grant applications. So there may have been confusion about which of the applications was being discussed at the time. I can't speak to the specifics of the conversation. I'm not sure of the details, but I do know that there was a neighborhood initiative grant application that was successfully submitted and was in progress. So there perhaps would have been confusion around that.
Okay, so I'd like to put a motion on the floor. I know they asked for the funding. They're not getting any money for other sources. They just get $4,600 that they collect as a Tamil community to our hospital. They just opened a food bank here in Brampton, and so I'd like to put a motion on the floor to let them receive their grant for the $9,000.
So on that note, Councilor Fortini, if I can jump in, were the staff supportive of this application?
Through the chair, yes, staff are supportive of this application. We've had the opportunity with the delegation coming today to evaluate the application, and it scores very well through the evaluation process, and we're happy to recommend the application for funding.
Okay, so I won't need a motion then.
Sorry?
So I think I don't need, I'm sorry, through the chair, I won't need a motion then if they're in support of it.
No, I think we need a motion to
Is it?
accept these
Okay.
technically because of the technical issue.
Okay.
You're right, Mr. Mayor, and I believe the intent of Councillor Fortini's motion is identified as number 9 in red, so it would be an amendment in addition to the staff recommendations in the revised report.
Thank you.
Are there questions and comments on this motion? Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be very happy to second the motion. This is an unusual situation. A lot of people in the community have a lot of questions about how the grants process works, and while the city does a great job of explaining all the ins and outs, and they have workshops that community groups can participate in, it's always possible that an organization may miss a deadline, as was the case here. Just to echo Councillor Fortini's point that the Brampton Tamil Seniors Association does a tremendous amount of work here in the city of Brampton, and I believe that on this one-time exception, we should look upon this request favorably and continue to enhance the community, which is the primary purpose of the grants program. So I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you. Just through the mayor, thank you, Councillor Fortini and Councillor Vicente for supporting this organization. Great work that they do. Sometimes these things happen, and thank you to staff for not being so rigid and recognizing a situation in which we can address. And certainly I think an organization like this deserves to be supported, and we want to continue that they're engaged with the city and and continue to provide that support sometimes to civil society that city sometimes can't. And that means engaging with their seniors, keeping them active, and I know they're dedicated Bramptonians and very proud of their roots. So thank you very much.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you. I just want to say that on a one-time exception, because I do believe that, and I know there was a clerical error, I believe, administrative, and so it was missed somehow. I know that the association has done an exceptional job in the community, and so I commend them for the work, but at the same time, I think going forward, I think whether it's on the part of the applicant or the city, I think we've got to make sure that we don't get these deadlines missed anymore. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Singh.
Thank you. I am also supportive of this one-time exception. I do know members of the club very well. They're very active. They're actually very innovative as well. They do keyboard classes. They do cooking. And that's the kind of services we need, especially in our area. They're an important institution for the Tamil community as well. And so I will be supporting this, and I also want to thank staff for, taking care of this. Thank you.
Councillor Bowman.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Kelly, I'm just looking at one of the groups there, the Flower City Bhangra. Is that the event, or is that the group that does the events? Because whenever we have them here, aren't they introduced as the Flower City Bhangra group? I'm just wondering. Or are we having an event called Flower City Bhangra 2019?
Through the chair, the organization is the South Foundation, and the project name is Flower City Bhangra 2019.
Okay, so is that the dancers that we sometimes have at our events?
Through the chair, that will be one of the organizations that, yes, has presented before with the city.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions or comments, I would say I think the city has a long-term relationship with the Brampton Tamil Seniors Association. They do great work in our community, and I am sure that this technical glitch won't happen again in the future. There's been a lesson learned. I would say this is not normal practice for the city to make an amendment like this, but it's happening because of the outpouring of respect that there is for the Brampton Tamil Seniors Association. We know you're going to have a terrific event this year, and we look forward to all being there to participate. One question though on the grants. We discussed this last time. A few members of councillors asked if we could verify linkages to Brampton of all applicants, and are you satisfied that all applicants are Brampton organizations, and you've got full confidence that we can pass this with no concerns?
Through the chair, there has been contact made with all of the organizations that are listed here to verify eligibility. They will still be required to demonstrate through legal documentation at the meeting with staff before signing the grant agreement, but there has been direct contact with all organizations to verify eligibility, yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the motion we have is the entire motion or the amendment? Okay, the entire motion is amended. And so this is moved by Councillor Wilman, seconded by Councillor Bowman. Okay. So it's been superseded. Okay. As amended. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Now we have the delegation from Myrna Adams and Peter Horath, Director of Brampton Seniors Council. I've moved by Councillor Willens, seconded by Councillor Bowman. All those in favor?
Just receive the delegation.
Yes, receive, yeah. You want to speak to it?
Sure. No, not the delegation.
Okay, good. Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries.
Is anybody doing anything about it?
Nope. Okay. Next item. Oh, Councillor Pelletier.
So they did have a request, and I guess in a report on transit, can we bring that forward? Is it appropriate to bring that forward now?
You, Mr. Mayor, if that's the will of council, council can deal with that recommendation now.
Okay, so I'll request that we bring that forward and ask for the, maybe if transit can make a comment to a small amendment that I have with respect to the ask, and that's for, Peter, can you read out what I had said before? 'Cause I can't remember.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe Councillor Paletti intends to move an amendment to the committee recommendation to strike out the wording on the screen and put in substitute wording in terms of an earlier potential implementation of free transit fares.
Subject to the budget, the 2020 budget approval process. And if, Alex, can you speak to that on implications?
Yeah, absolutely, through the mayor. I'm just catching up on the amendment to the motion. So maybe I could just speak a little bit about the program, what our intent is. Based on the motion that was tabled a few days ago, and I don't have it in front of me, but clearly we understood that staff's direction is to take this back to implement the $15 resident senior pass program. And at the same time, within this term of council, and I say what I took from this back from that motion was to look at sponsorship opportunities to offset the revenue loss for a full free pass. Our intent is to come back later this year with a report that outlines how potentially we can do that. And if that can be implemented in 2020, great. I think there's a bit of work to be done on that and looking at the sponsorship itself. The other thing that I will mention too is our program that we outlined and based on the council motion, option A with that $15 a month gives us an opportunity to onboard the senior residents in a staged approach. And we have approximately 80,000 seniors in our community. There's 28,000 senior resident ID cards that Transit has issued since we have the $1 cash program, which is fairly substantial. We expect another 10 to 15,000 through this $15 program and substantially more if we go totally free. So what this allows us to do is stage it in an incremental approach to onboard potentially up to 15,000, and then given the report that staff can come back to council in terms of how a free senior resident fare would look like, we can stage that incrementally again. I think the intent of the motion was during the council term of office, but clearly, if possible, as soon as possible, and we want to explore that sponsorship opportunity as the mayor brought up.
Yes. Councillor Paletti still?
And thank you, Alex. And, I think that if you weren't here today, this wouldn't have, I think, come to light. I think members of council have somewhat of a desire for this to happen. And, I have to start by thanking first, Councilor Medeiros for recognizing the fact that what he hears at the meetings he attends for the seniors and having you provide comment and come before us and to keep that dialogue open and talk about. So I thank Councilor Medeiros for initiating that and getting you here, essentially. I'm putting this forward because I believe that it was the will of members of council to have something like this before us. I don't see anybody on the board for this, but I believe that's the will, so I'm putting the amendment on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And on that note, Alex, does this give you enough time with the sponsorship opportunities? We have this discussion, we're looking at a potential billboard at the station that could help alleviate costs. I'm not sure there's been any conversation so far with sponsorship, but would this give the lead time to work on such an agreement?
So to you, Mayor, we are aggressively going to be looking at the sponsorship, and we hope to be able to report back to council with the hopes of even by the end of the year. I just want to clarify, if I may, that the amended motion reads that we would implement a free pass by Q1. And we're saying in the report on the $15 a pass that we would be implementing by Q4 or Q1 of 2020. So I just want to make sure that if I'm understanding this correctly, you're asking for, in this motion, to implement a free fare pass by Q1.
Subject to 2020 budget and some of the sponsorship details that the mayor spoke about.
So I would just, if I can respectfully through you, Mayor, if we go down the road of potentially achieving this, it would be a substantial waste of energy and time to try to implement a $15 a pass at the same time, because that would be eliminated. If we have a free senior fare, then there would be no need for a $15 pass because everyone would migrate to a free senior fare. So if the motion here reads the way it is, my understanding is that we would be implementing by Q1. If the motion would be amended to read that we would report back no later than Q1 on what a free transit pass would look like for senior residents, then that's a bit of a different, more palatable approach to take.
Okay.
But again, we take the direction from councils.
Any additional questions, Councillor Fletcher? No, Councillor Dillon?
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think everybody was in agreement that they wanted to do something for our senior community, and I think staff did a great job in working with us and trying to get something that was as quick as possible and as fair as possible. And so my question would have been, my comment would have been, I think if we could have done it by 2020, staff would have informed us that they could have. So just to clarify, you're saying that implementation, the word implementation might be an issue, but to report back by 2020, you'd feel more comfortable with that. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, certainly to report back by Q1 is very reasonable. What I was trying to say is that implementation of Q1, if we had council direction to implement either option, would be something that could be achieved by Q1. If council is asking us to implement the option A, which is a $15 a month pass first, then it becomes very problematic if in Q1 we're implementing a free fare system because of the requirements to work with Presto in terms of developing the fare products and everything.
So you're saying that staff would feel more comfortable to, instead of implementation, to report back in Q1, is that correct?
Through the mayor, certainly if we were looking at a sponsorship program, absolutely to report back in Q1 would be very reasonable.
Right. And so I think, and I appreciate the representatives coming today. I think what was passed, was something I thought we had a lot of conversation with a bunch of seniors groups and a bunch of seniors individually as well. They were quite excited with it as well. And I think what we have to do is kind of push this forward in a responsible manner as well. We're looking, I'm hopeful we'll get the zero tax increase today. And to move down to a $15 pass for the first year, then work towards zero towards 2020, I think it's a pretty big achievement in my opinion as well. But we also have to be fair to staff as well, to give them enough time to make sure that they're able to actually get us to that point. And so if I could ask just a friendly amendment to change to the mover of the motion, to change it to report back, I think that'd be, so I think Mr. Councilor Fletcher is okay with that.
So the request was if the amendment will be altered?
Yeah.
Okay, and just the wording of the friendly amendment? Okay.
I would like to report back during the 2020 budget process, not Q1 of 2020.
Okay.
2020 budget process.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Okay.
Alex,
Friendly
you're good? Yep, okay.
Okay. So we have a motion. This has been brought forward. Where we have that motion? Okay. Moved by Councillor Pelletier, seconded by Councillor Dillon. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. So now we're to 8.1. I'll give you that. 8.1 has been dealt with because of items already been addressed through delegation 6.1. 8.2, the item has already been addressed through delegation 6.2. So now we're on to 8.3. Our next item is 8.3, a staff report regarding the Brampton Bramley Christian Fellowship Residences Limited fees and charges related to the affordable housing project follow-up report. This item was considered by council back at the end of 2008 and again in January 2019. At the January 23rd council meeting, this item was deferred to an appropriate meeting of City Council prior to April 1st, 2019. Staff have brought this further report back to council for consideration, as well as the last report from January is on today's agenda as unfinished business item 11.1. Do any members have questions or comments on the staff report? Seeing none, I have a motion by Councillor Fatini, seconded by Councillor Williams, to approve the staff report. All those in favor? Motion carries. I see representatives from the Bramley Christian Fellowship Residences. Thank you for your patience today. We also received unfinished business item 11.1. I have a motion by Councillor. Do we need a motion for this then? Was it already dealt with? Okay. 8.4, this item was considered as part of the consent motion. 8.5, this item was part of the consent motion as well. Committee reports. We are now at item 10, committee reports or minutes. We have 5 committee reports in the form of minutes on today's agenda. Under council's meeting procedures, the committee or section chair introduces their committee report or minutes and summarizes the matters considered and now brought forward to council today for ratification. Councilor Medeiros, you chaired the audit committee, which met on March 5th. The committee minutes are here for council approval. I now pass the chair to you to lead council in consideration of the committee minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, you have before you the audit committee minutes of March 5th. Are there any questions or comments? Nope. Back to you, Mayor.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you. I have a motion from Councilor Medeiros, seconded by Councilor Santos. All those in favor? Motion carries. Minutes received. Councilor Fatini, you chaired the Citizen Appointments Committee, which met on March 11th and 12th. The committee minutes are here for council approval. I now pass the chair to you to lead council in consideration of the committee minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, you have the minutes in front of you. Is there any questions? Seeing none, I'll send it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for ratification.
Thank you. I have a motion from Councilor Fortini, seconded by Councilor Vicente, to approve the committee minutes. All those in favor? Motion carries. Councilor Medeiros, you chaired the audit committee, which met on March 19th. The second audit committee. The committee minutes are here for council approval. I now pass the chair to you to lead council in consideration of the committee minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, you have before you the audit committee minutes of March 19th. Are there any questions or comments? No. Back to you, Mayor.
Moved by Councilor Medeiros, seconded by Councilor Santos. All those in favor? Motion carries. Committee of Council met on March 20th. The committee recommendations are here for council approval. I will now pass the chair to the respective section chairs in order of consideration during the committee meeting to lead council in the consideration of the committee recommendations. Councillor Dillon chaired the Economic Development and Culture. Councillor Santos chaired the Corporate Services section, the Public Works and Engineering section, and the Community Services section. Council will then consider a motion to approve the recommendations in its entirety after all section chairs have concluded their summaries and any resulting council questions or debate has finished. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have the minutes of the Economic Development Committee before you. Are there any questions? Councilor Pelletier, do you have any?
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Councillor Santos?
Members of council, you have the minutes for the corporate services section. Any questions or comments on that particular section? Seeing none, you also have the minutes for the public works and engineering section. Any questions or comments? None. Community service section, questions or comments? None. I pass that over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. I have a motion from Councillor Dillon, seconded by Councillor Santos. The minutes of the Committee of Council meeting March 20th, 2019, to the Council meeting of March 27th be received, and the recommendations be approved and outlined in the subject minutes. All those in favor? Motion carries. Councillor Medeiros, you chaired the Planning and Development Committee, which met on March 25th. The committee recommendations were were distributed at the start of today's meeting for council approval. The meeting minutes will be presented on April 10th. Council meeting to be received. I now pass the chair to you to lead council in the consideration of the committee minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, you have before you the Planning and Development Committee minutes of March 25th. Are there any questions or comments? Going once, twice, three times. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion from Councillor Medeiros, seconded by Councillor Fertini. The summary of recommendations of the Planning and Development Committee meeting March 25th, 2019 be received, and the recommendations be approved outlined in the subject summary. All those in favor? Motion carries. 11.1, this item was addressed earlier in the meeting as part of item 8.3. 11.2 was already addressed in item 8.1. Moving to 16.2. Although correspondence. 16.2 was withdrawn. We have, do we need a motion to accept correspondence? Okay, good. So that's the would be Sahota one. Okay, good. Okay, so 16.2 is withdrawn. That moves us to 18.1. Oh, okay, yes. The added item 16.4, Councillor Bowman, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't want to take up too much time. I just wanted to put this forward. It has no impact on budget or anything that we're going to be doing today. I just thought we are looking at trying to create jobs here in the city. We're looking at trying to keep people working in the city, and I thought there's a lot of benefit in possibly looking at an internship or co-op program or something like that for youth in the city to work in some of our departments. So I've put a motion together, which I'll read. It's seconded by Councillor Palashi, and very simply it says, whereas the City of Brampton is a leader in nurturing youth empowerment and encouraging our young people to fill leadership roles, whereas we want to give our high school and university students opportunities for possible employment avenues through the City of Brampton and gain real-life experience, and whereas this opportunity supports the city's strategic plan through public engagement of the city's 2040 vision, Living the Mosaic, which encourages citizens to be involved in Brampton in a systematic and inclusive way at all time and on all matters. Therefore, be it resolved that A, the City of Brampton explore options to institute a co-op or internship program through any and all applicable departments. B, if there are costs involved, to report back for council review and provide direction. And C, city staff report back with recommendations and an implementation plan.
Okay, we have a few speakers on this front. To Councillor Bowman, thank you. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bowman and Councillor Palashi, for bringing this forward. I guess a question to staff. My understanding is that we were developing a program, or I remember an update to council from our previous HR director that we were under the development of one, and I know as well there was direction given through one of the committees that we struck, and I think it was Councillor Santos, and maybe she will, which also gave direction to developing a youth internship. So I guess the magic question is there something in place right now?
Thank you, and through the mayor, HR is currently working on that youth employment strategy, which highlights some of the important points that Councillor Bowman has put forward in his motion. We do have a co-op program and an internship program. We leverage partners such as Career Edge, who's delegated to council in the past. So we look forward to the opportunity to report back to council, provide some further information on what we're actually doing and what we're proposing to do.
Okay. So then I guess to staff regarding the motion, so I want to support the motion, so I'm going to support Councillor Bowman bringing that forward for the discussion. So maybe there's aspects of the motion that could be used as, I'm not sure if the motion's still required or not, because it is being developed already, the internship program, is that correct?
Through the mayor, it is under development right now.
Okay.
So it might be worthwhile for us to bring forward some potential ideas to date, and then vet that through council to determine if we're going down the right path, and if there's any additional items that would be further enhanced as part of that strategy.
So I guess through the mayor to the mover of the motion, maybe Councillor Bowman, you would want to add a timeline to at least give some emphasis and allow your motion to have impact in bringing something forward.
Sure. How much?
Through the mayor, would Q3 be acceptable?
Sure. If you guys can do it by then, that's great.
I would have to check with staff, but I believe that would be, given that it's already underway, I think that would be reasonable.
Thank you.
Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the mover of the motion. There is some of this was captured in the motion regarding the Youth Council. We spoke a lot about mentorship and the importance of providing opportunities for young people, and it kind of relates to our conversation earlier today about preventative measures for young people to get involved in, get them away from gangs and into positive contributions in the community. So I support the motion, understanding that it is, there's some overlap, and look forward to the report as well. I will ask a question though. The current co-op internship programs held by the city, does that also include councillors' offices as well?
Through the chair, not directly, but HR is available to support council in doing that type of co-op or internship program. Right now, typically it is happening directly with departments to put those in place, but there's nothing that precludes us from doing that with councillors.
Great. And so then one final suggestion as we're preparing the sort of recommendations to come forward in the future is at Queen's Park, they have the OLIP intern program, and the interns involved have to rotate to different departments, different ministries, different party offices throughout their time of their internship program. I think it would be super neat to somehow include that for all of those young people so they get a real wholesome look as to the operations of the city in the councillors' offices and within your own departments as well. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dillon.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, I was wondering if you got, if the movers had emailed this to everybody beforehand?
No,
Right,
this was brought on this morning.
Right, and I'm wondering if we got a printed copy of it. Because I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
We never had time to really look at the motion, so I'm not sure what exactly we're voting on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you wish, I can reread the motion, or I can just share it with you while the...
Yeah, so I understand it's about internship, right? So,
Just a report back.
yeah, can you read it over again? Or clerk or the mover?
So it is moved by Councillor Bowman and seconded by Councillor Paleshi. Whereas the City of Brampton is a leader in nurturing, would you like me to read all the whereases, or just the...
No, you can just read the...
Okay. So therefore be it resolved that the City of Brampton explore options to institute a co-op or internship program through all applicable departments. B, if there are costs, council review and provide direction to departments. C, city staff report back with recommendations and an implementation plan by Q3 2019.
Sorry, and thank you, Mr. Clerk. And sorry, I think, Joe, you had said that we're already working on something.
Through the chair, that's correct. We are working on a youth employment strategy, and Commissioner Meneses had indicated to us that we do already partner with the region of Peel,
Right.
hiring hundreds of at-risk youth every year.
So
that would be part of our report back. Again, it's just an information report as well as identify some potential directions for council consideration.
Okay, so you're okay with the request for the report back?
Through the mayor, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Typically, I think it'd be better for just a little bit more discussion to bring it to committee. At least that's what's been told to me when I try to bring stuff on.
Simply for a report back, so
It's okay.
no big deal.
But I'll support it.
Councilor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to the mover of the motion. When we speak about internships, are we talking about paid internships? Is there an understanding that there is remuneration for this, whether it's through credits or through proper remuneration?
I'm gonna reply.
Councilor Bowman?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely. And just for everybody's information as well, part of what I want to look at is the possibility, and it could be through any department, but the possibility of, say, planning, where we get a couple of junior planners before they reach planner one, for example, to come in and work paid. They're certainly not going to make the rate that a level one planner would make, but they come in, they learn, they develop, and they grow here with the city of Brampton. So yeah, absolutely paid positions, yeah.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Councilor Bowman again?
Nope.
Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Councilor Bowman. On to item 18.1. Our next item is government relations matters. Materials have been distributed electronically to council yesterday by the CAO's office and at the start of today's meeting by the clerk's office. Lowell Ruben Vaughan, Office of CAO, is here to respond to any questions from council. Do any members have questions regarding the information provided? Councilor Vicente.
Mr. Chair, in the government relations package and along with correspondence, and I first noticed this message from MP Ruby Sahota posted online, I believe it was a day or two ago, asking for this municipality to work together with the federal government to advocate to the provincial government to, shall we say, open up the door to allowing funding to flow through the province. And I'd be very inclined to have council address this item if possible today. I think it's very important. It's also a question of time because as we know, the federal election is happening this fall. And I believe that we should have a discussion on the content of this letter and provide some direction to staff on what next steps we might need to take as a municipality. So with that, I would perhaps allow you, Chair, to lead the discussion.
So, Councilor Vicente, I think in fairness to Lowell Ruben Vaughan, I think in terms of advocacy to the province on this, it would have to be, in terms of next steps, I think if we want to write a letter asking the province to open up the next intake, as you know, they opened it up outside of the GTHA, and this is for the big projects. This is Building Canada. This is not the small street upgrades. This is, LRT Phase 2. This is the most significant federal and provincial funding. And so I think it would be entirely appropriate, Councilor Vicente, to put forward a motion that we as a city ask the province to open up the funding intake just like they have in the rest of the province. But maybe you could work with that on that motion while we give Lowell an opportunity to respond.
Through the mayor, I think that would be the advice and probably a really good direction for this council. That's why a couple of weeks ago, during a previous government relations update, one of the items that I did stress was the importance to open up that intake. If you look at the timing, just even in the full stream that they opened up for the rural and northern streams, timelines are pretty tight. So it's an 8-week intake. Then there's going to be a provincial review of each of those projects, because as part of the integrated bilateral agreement, all the projects have to be sent to the federal government as one package. The federal government, in speaking to their staff, has committed to at least a 4 to 6 week review process. So if you add all these months together, and then you take yesterday's announcements about opening up the intake for just the public transit stream outside of the GTA, we're really pushing it close to the federal election, and any week that goes past, we're really looking at losing another full year within this 10-year agreement. So our hope is that the province does open the intake for the public transit stream, which is different than the other ones, whereas Brampton has already been allocated a certain amount based on ridership. So this gives us a little bit of an advantage in terms of how we can plan and how we can leverage those dollars. And the note that I sent yesterday, it is substantial dollars. So it's, $193 million from the federal government, about $150 million from the province, plus the municipalities portion, which would be 27% of all the total package. So close to $500 million worth of projects. So absolutely, we need to push the government to open up the intake, not just on the public transit stream, but also on the green and social streams as well, because we've already lost last year. If you just look at the time it takes, and staff is looking at it from a process perspective, we're really getting it close for losing 2019 allocated dollars. So with that, staff would be very supportive of the motion. Anything that the mayor and this council can do every time you talk to our MPPs.
Okay. We have Councillor Fertini, and then we'll go back to the potential motion from Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. So if the province doesn't release money, decide not to release it, can I use the federal? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. So the way that the bilateral agreement has been signed is that the federal government has committed a certain percentage or a certain amount of dollars for public transit. This is matched up to at least 33% by the provincial government, and then the rest of the total cost is made up by municipal portions. So because of that agreement, we can't access the federal portion within that agreement.
Yeah, and going back to those water flood risk, the water ponds in the backyards, 4 of them alone is going to Toronto. So there's not much street in Canada. Hoping to get one for Brampton. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fertini. Councillor Vicente, do we have a motion to?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, if there's quickly a motion on the screen, if it suits the councillor's needs. The first is to receive the presentation from Lowell. The second is to receive the correspondence from the MP for Brampton North. And the third, I believe, starts to get at the discussion, but I'll leave it to council.
Okay. Shall we do this one first, or do receive the report first? Okay. So we'll do all three at the same time. It was moved by Councillor Willen, seconded by Councillor Fertini. Okay. Alex, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you to the mayor. I think it's, if I can suggest, I suggest this in caution. We have the announcement that came out in terms of opening up application processes, and strangely enough, for whatever reason, the GTHA, including Milton, was not part of that. Trans has been trying to get clarification on the rationale behind this. I think it's extremely important because our multi-year capital program completely relies for transit on this public transit stream funding for the next many years. As Lowell mentioned, there's approximately $500 million in total. That is an apportionment between the federal government, provincial government with a bilateral agreement, and to the municipality. It may be, may I suggest a motion potentially read that if staff can get before council a report as soon as possible, outlining what those projects are, so the province understands where the pressures are for our municipality, if that's a will of council, and that would correspond with our multi-year capital program. Because if that doesn't come through for some reason, the treasurer has to bring back a very different financial model and budget request for the capital program that we have in the years to come. So I just wanted to maybe add that, and I know it may complicate things more, but I think it's prudent that you're made aware of that.
Okay. Councillor Singh.
That threw a little bit of a monkey wrench there. So we suggest, is a suggestion from staff that we wait a little bit? Is that what I'm hearing? Or it was a suggestion that we wait a little bit so we could get more information to send, including those capital projects that you were mentioning?
Through the mayor, I think it's a comment that we try to reduce the amount of wait to get this report in as quick as possible. I think what's important, though, is that we identify what capital programs we have ready to go, and we're requiring that funding because the staff has done some preliminary work on where that funding could be expended, and it's reflected in the capital outlook that's before you in the capital program. The treasurer just confirmed that for me. Thank you. So clearly, if that doesn't happen, all those capital future years could be at jeopardy in terms of what the allocation of the municipal portion is. So if staff, if council allows staff to quickly turn around a report, and I mean very quick, and I have to look at our CAO to see how quick we can turn it around, but to get that back for council approval, that then could be forwarded off to the provincial and federal government to make it very clear where our city stands on the capital requirements.
So perhaps maybe we could look at deferring this to next council and getting that information by that time. Is that enough of a time? Right, so we would defer this motion. Makes sense? So do you need a motion to defer right now or to, yeah, so could I put that motion up? Or could that be amended to Councillor Sante's motion? I feel like we should have the complete information before we shoot a letter out, because once a letter is out, it's gone. You know, should have a complete.
Refer it back to staff.
Okay, that's fine. Refer it back to.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe then you're referring part 3 on the screen back to staff for further review and report back.
Quick time break to be determined by staff.
Yeah, and to the mover, I guess the only thing I'd add in is very soon we're going to get the staff report back on the LRT, and so next week, right? So you know that whereas certainly our aspirations are not limited to 240 million in shovel-ready projects, but.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, in speaking with my colleagues here, we feel is relatively confident we can have a walk-on report to what our General Manager of Transit was referring to for this evening's meeting for budget. So we're working as hard and as fast as we can, and that gets us more quickly to this so you can address it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Vicente.
To remove the number to 240, so we just word it as has identified shovel-ready projects.
It's your motion.
Okay. And perhaps if Mr. Clerk, you could capture the CAO's recommendation for today. Thank you.
Councilor Santos?
Through you, Chair, and just for clarification, so we had a meeting with MP's offices, and there was a very long discussion about what the definition of shovel-ready is, whether at the federal, provincial, municipal level. And so I just am concerned about using the term shovel-ready in here. If the province's definition of shovel-ready is different from ours versus the federal government, then we have a problem. So perhaps there's better words we can use to make sure we don't get caught in that trap.
Through the mayor, that's a good point. Within this case, the list of projects is tied specifically to the integrated bilateral agreements, and we know the expected outcomes and the objectives, so it's not necessarily shovel-ready. It's the projects that will fall within the 10-year integrated bilateral agreement. And of course, some of the projects will probably be sequenced over the course of the 10-year, which is a positive step in terms of planning.
So if I may just suggest that we just change the language from shovel-ready projects to reflect the comments that Lowell has just made. So I guess the wording would be around the IBAC 10-year agreement, or?
Through the mayor, it could be that falls within the 10-year integrated bilateral agreements, the federal-provincial 10-year integrated bilateral agreement.
Good. Okay. Well, doesn't it, Councilor Vicente, I think you can keep shovel-ready in it, because they will be shovel-ready. Yeah. So I keep shovel-ready in. Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Public question period. Now we can deal with item number 19, which is public question period. This is where we invite members of the public to come forward to the podium to ask any question about any decision made by council today. There's a 15-minute limit for all questions and answers. Are there any questions from the public about a decision made by council at today's meeting? If so, come forward. Please state your name for the meeting record and your questions succinctly related to one of council's decisions made at today's meeting.
Hello, my name is Sylvia. I'm a resident of Ward 3. I'd like to thank council for looking at having paid internships for youth, not just like considered at-risk youth, but actually involving them in real departments to a substantial level, like planning. The city has the official plan and other stuff involved. These pieces of municipal rules last decades, and because they affect buildings, they last. What you pass soon, the buildings and the effects will be existing in 2100. So it's
Sorry,
yeah.
through you, Mr. Mayor. You need to form your statement in the form of a question, please, related to decisions council's made today.
When you're talking about paid internships for youth, can you make sure it also considers involving youth in planning long-term decisions, as the youth of today will be responsible for dealing with the effects of decisions made?
Yes. Seeing no other questions, we're now at the portion of the meeting dealing with the adoption of city bylaws, which give effect to council decisions made at this meeting and previous meetings. I have a motion by Councillor. I have a motion from Councillor Willens and seconded by Councillor Fortini. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, our next item of business, item 21, closed session business. I have a motion from Councillor Willens and Councillor Bowman to move into closed session to deal with the following: minutes closed session City Council March 6th, minutes closed session Citizen Appointments Committee March 11th and 12th, minutes closed session Audit Committee, minutes closed session Committee of Council March 20th, a proposed or pending acquisition and disposition of land, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, litigation or potential litigation including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, personal matters about identifiable individual including municipal or local board employees, citizen awards recipients, subject matter related to municipal freedom of information and protection of Privacy Act, table of appeals decisions, MFIPPA, access requests before the Information and Privacy Commissioner, personal matters about identifiable individual including municipal or local board employees, and labor relations or employee negotiations, council office transition matters. And since Willens is not here, it's Councillor Paleski seconding it. All those in favor? Motion carries. So, we'll meet upstairs in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. You confirming bylaw? Oh, you, okay. Okay, there's some public motions, yes. Do you have those? Session, any outcomes of today's closed session business. As a result of our closed session today, I wish to report the following. 21.1, these minutes were acknowledged by council. 21.2, these minutes were considered in closed session and direction was given to consider the following motion in public session. The clerk will display this motion on the screen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there are a number of motions regarding citizen appointments to 4 committees. The Brampton Library Board, which is the first motion on the screen. We will need, I think Councilor Fortini is the mover as chair of the Citizen Appointments Committee. We will need a seconder.
Councillor Santos offered.
So there are 8 members who were interviewed, who are recommended for appointment to the Brampton Library Board for the term of council. And Part B are 3 citizens who were interviewed who are recommended as alternates should a vacancy occur. And then these alternates, in priority order, would take a seat on the Brampton Library Board. So that's the first set. The second set, through you, Mr. Mayor, is the Brampton Appeal Tribunal. There are 5 citizens that are recommended for appointment. They are shown on the screen as part of the motion, and there are 2 alternates that are identified should a vacancy occur. Property Standards Committee, there are 5 citizens recommended for appointment, and then there are 2 alternates who are recommended for should a vacancy occur. And finally, there is the Committee of Adjustment, and there are 5 citizens recommended for appointment and 3 alternates should a vacancy occur. And you can take a
motion to accept them all.
Yeah, Councilor Fortini's on the board.
You corrected after.
Okay, we will correct that.
Yes, it's the J. No, at the beginning.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, Chairman G.
Yes.
So you can take that as one
Okay.
motion.
Motion to receive. This
To
is one
approve.
motion. Councilor Bertini, seconded by Councilor Santos. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, 21.3, minutes closed session audit committee, March 19th, 2019. These minutes were acknowledged by council. 21.4, minutes closed session committee of council, March 20th. These minutes were acknowledged by council. 21.5, this item was given consideration in closed session and direction was given to staff. And there's a public motion, which will be put on the screen. Do we have a mover for this Councillor Singh, seconded by Councillor Vicente. All those in favor? Motion carries. 21.6, this item was considered in closed session. Direction was given to consider the following motion in public session. Do we have a mover for this motion? Councillor Vicente, seconded by Councillor Palashi. All those in favor? Motion carries. 21.7, this item was considered in closed session. No direction was given to staff. 21.8, this item was considered in closed session. Direction was given to consider the following motion in public session. It'll be put on the screen.
Mr. Mayor, this is a rather lengthy motion, so this is a list of 2018 Citizen Award recipients. The first is for sports achievement as individuals. There are 54. The second is for sports achievement, as continuation of that. After that is sports achievement for teams. There are 12 teams identified. There's inspirational citizen awards for 5 individuals. There's arts acclaim awards for 4 individuals and 1 collective arts acclaim award. There are long-term service awards for individuals for 10 years of service to the community, and there are 25 individuals receiving this award. And for long-term service for individuals for 25 years of service to the community, there are 8 individuals identified. And long-term service for individuals for 35 years, there's 1 person identified. There's the Volunteer of the Year individual who's identified, and then the Senior of the Year. And I understand staff will be communicating out with all these individuals immediately after today's council meeting.
Okay. Thank you. We've got a mover of this motion. I see Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Bowman. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. .7, this item was considered in closed session. No direction was given to staff. 21.8, this item was considered in closed session. The direction was given to consider the following motion in public session. This is what we just did. 21.9, the item was considered in closed session. No direction was given to staff. 21.10, this item was considered in closed session and direction was given to staff. That's it. Okay. So our next item of business is item 22, confirming bylaw. I have a motion from Councillor Bertini, seconded by Councillor Willens, to approve the confirming bylaw to confirm the preceding decisions from this meeting. All those in favor? Motion carries. Our last item of business is item 23, adjournment. Thank you, members, for your respectful consideration. Decisions today, and thank you for staff for your information and advice. Council is next scheduled to meet tonight at 7 p.m., so we get to spend more time together for our final budget meeting. And we'll also be meeting Wednesday, April 10th at 9:30 a.m. and Wednesday, April 24th at 9:30 a.m. I have a motion moved by Councillor Willen, seconded by Councillor Fertini, to adjourn today's meeting. I assume there's no debate. All those in favor of the motion? The motion carries. The meeting is adjourned.